Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of viewers aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button. It really helps keep these long stories coming. Also, for even more police horror stories, check out my new channel. The link's in the description and pinned comment. I'd love it if you stop by and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. What time is it where you are and which city are you listening from tonight? Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. I'm hunched over the wheel, rain sluicing in sheets across the windshield, and I can't remember the last time I felt this exposed. The dashboard clock reads 2:47 a.m., but who knows for sure? In storms like this, the power flickers and my watch drifts 5, sometimes 10 minutes behind. This stretch of County Road D lies 6 miles outside Monticello, Arkansas, where the street lamps cut out in a perfect blackout halfway up the hill. Even the moon hides behind the clouds tonight, leaving me alone with the static hum of the radio and the relentless percussion of the storm. I should have turned back 15 minutes ago when dispatch pinged me about a single vehicle crash at the old Harwood turnoff. The kind of call every patrol officer hates. No witnesses, no license plate for a lead, and cars sliding off the road all the time in these conditions. Slick tarmac, high water pooling in the ditches, gravel shoulders that drop you into a yawning creek if you stray too far. But something about the call set my gut on edge. A tight knot I've learned over 30 years means you don't walk away. When I parked my cruiser half on the shoulder, the engine died for a split second under the weight of my sigh. Headlights illuminating a sodden field in the dark gash where the asphalt meets grass. I edged forward on foot, boots sinking in mud, and squeezed the flashlight trigger. Beams lanced through the downpour, landing on a silver sedan skewed at the ditch's edge, nose buried in mud. Engine off, lights dead, but no sign of wheels spun out. No deep tread marks through the grass, like someone ghosted into the ditch rather than fought the skid. I circled, scanning for footprints. Fresh tracks led back up toward the road, leaving the ditch completely untroubled. I crouched low, traced a single trail of prints in the wet earth, and frowned. They stopped 10 feet past where the car's door should be. Swept upward, the path trended toward a broken fence, one plank missing, splintered. Beyond, I thought I heard the scuffle of something moving against the wind, branches scraping, a distant drip of water. My radio crackled. Unit 7, verify location. I glanced at the ditch and half answered, check. Nobody in the vehicle, returning to cruiser. When I turned back, the car's tail light winked on for a second, just the slightest red gleam through the driver's side window, and then vanished. My chest tightened like a vice. I raised the flashlight through the windshield, but all I saw was water sliding down the glass, distorting the beam. I keyed the mic again. Dispatch, I need backup on County Road D. There's an abandoned static cut me off. The storm must have knocked a transformer. The whole county lost grid for a minute, then came back in a shudder. My lights flickered. I heard my own breath rise in my chest. Controlled, measured, but I could taste the adrenaline. I stepped onto the road, the rain instantly soaking me through. Wipers on full blast won't clear this kind of downpour. I followed the footprints up the embankment toward the fence. When I reached it, the broken plank looked freshly splintered, like something, or someone, had forced their way through minutes ago. My gloved hand slid along the jagged wood. It was slippery, coated in sap and rainwater. I climbed through the gap and froze. In the small pasture beyond, a single umbrella lay opened face down, ribs broken and bent inward. No handle, like whoever left it wanted to shed identity entirely. The canopy was dry, untouched by the storm gashing the fields around it. I shone the beam across the opening. Tall weeds, a stray cow 100 yards off, and beyond that, the black silhouette of the creek's tree line, dark and still. No footprints led away from the umbrella. Nothing but the relentless drumming of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. I should have radioed back, called for a tow, and left it to evidence, but I kept walking, compelled. The umbrella's spokes dug into the mud, half buried, like a mocking invitation. I knelt and reached out, half expecting it to collapse beneath my fingers, wet torture, but it stayed rigid, bone dry. I flipped it over. The inside was pristine. No fingerprints, no mud, nothing but the odd sheen of water beating along the fabric, refusing to soak in. I straightened, turning slowly. That's when I heard it. Footsteps on wet grass. A single set coming straight toward me. Heavy, deliberate. Not running, like someone panicked, but walking with purpose. My blood hammered. I checked my holster, found the damp grip of my service weapon. I called, voice low into the wind. "Come out with your hands up." Silence. Then the footsteps stopped, dead in their tracks. I held my breath, the thunder rattling the fence posts. Rain kissed the collar of my coat, trickled down the side of my face. 10 seconds passed, maybe 20. It's impossible to tell in storms. Then I saw it, out of the corner of my eye, a human shape recoiling into the creek's shadow. I raised the flashlight, swung it over the tree line. Light cut through misty raindrops, landed on nothing. I blinked, wipers squealing overhead. The shape vanished, as though never there. My heart pounded so hard I could taste it. I trained the beam back on the umbrella, still bone dry. I thought I heard breathing behind me, heavy, ragged. I spun, swept the light, and caught only drifting rain and the black mouth of the creek. I backed away from the fence, calling dispatch again. My voice cracked. Unit 7 to dispatch. I need immediate backup on Road D. Suspect fled into creek bed. Send K9 if you have it. No answer. Static. The storm knocked them out again. I turned toward my cruiser, footprints leading back down the muddy embankment. Except where I landed, I found only one set of prints. My own. The other had disappeared, and the umbrella gone too, as if it never existed. I stood there for a long moment, rain sluicing around me, and I felt something in my gut click. I wasn't going to get any closure tonight, because storms like this don't end. They just shift, move on, and leave you behind in the dark, chasing shadows that don't want to be found. I climbed back into the cruiser, slammed the door, and the engine roared to life. As I pulled onto the road, my headlights caught movement again. Just beyond the fence line, a dark figure watching me. My radio crackled to life, dispatch's voice harsh over static, and I realized the moment had passed, but I couldn't shake it. Something in that rain-soaked field wanted to be found, and it wasn't done with me yet. The cruiser's heater kicked on, fogging the windows from the inside. I sat for too long, hands still tight on the wheel, listening to my own heartbeat drown under the radio's static shriek. When the dispatch finally came back, they sounded flat. "Unit 7, are you there?" I keyed the mic and pinned my voice low. "I'm here, returning to station. Need to file a report on a complicated situation." I let it trail, as if that explained anything. I punched the windshield wipers back to low. Whatever little clarity they offered was better than watching that rain smear clean lines into puddles. The road was a thin ribbon of pale paint swallowed by darkness, flanked by fields sodden under the storm. My headlights cut 2 shaky cones through the night, but up ahead, A pair of reflexive red dots glimmered at me from the ditch. Brake lights, maybe? Then they vanished. I slowed, grabbed the spotlight switch and pivoted it to the passenger side. The beam limped into the breath-steamy air, settling on a pair of boots standing ankle-deep in water. I thought I saw someone, leaning back, head tilted, silent. My throat clenched. I eased the cruiser over and killed the engine. Rain speared the hood. I opened the door. Mud sucked my boots as I stepped out. The sound of water against leather felt too loud, too precise. I aimed the spotlight at the boots. No body. "Hello?" I called. "You need help?" Nothing answered except my own echo through wet straps of woods behind me. I flicked off the spotlight, heart hammering. If I left witnesses to think I was spooked, good. Let them worry. I'd lost it in this storm. I drove on. Back at the station, sirens and lights flickered on the computers, only to die when the generator kicked in. The lobby was empty, chairs damp where runners had tracked rainwater across the tile. I left my flashlight on the reception desk, the beam splitting into a dozen dark strips across the linoleum floor. Half the consoles were dead or sleeping, screens black. Curfew meant nothing to thunderstorms. I padded through the hallway toward the locker room, mind replaying every footstep in that pasture, the hollow click of the taillight staring back. I pushed open the locker, my uniform hung still damp, and fished out a spare raincoat the station kept just for nights like this. On the wall above my own locker, someone had scrawled, "Watch your six in weather like this." A joke? A warning? I stared at it until my eyes burned, the fluorescent tube overhead buzzing. Then I peeled off my soaked coat and dropped it into the bin, every droplet like a countdown. My phone buzzed. Caller ID, dispatch. I tapped answer, voice still tight. "Got a job for you, 7? The dispatcher sighed. "Charity call. Mrs. Harper on Elm wants someone to trend her power line again. It sparks and hums, freaks her out in storms. She's in her 70s and said she'd sleep in the bathtub if it keeps up." I almost laughed at the absurdity. I was soaked to the bone, jittery as a rookie. But I said, "On my way." I grabbed the cruiser keys off the bulletin board and left the station. The wind had died down to a torrential whisper. I slid behind the wheel again, the seat still cold, and punched Elm Street into the GPS. 2 miles through the center of Monticello, where the neon crosses of closed convenience stores looked weirdly cheerful in the rain. I thought of Mrs. Harper, clutching that phone, Midwestern calm tainted by fear. I pulled out. The township road was quiet. My headlights glowed like search beams against clumps of fog. I hummed a tune under my breath to pass the silence, an old country ballad about rain, but my throat caught at the chorus. I tapped the wheel twice, counting 1, 2. One wrong move and my mind would slip back to the field, the dry umbrella, the ghost of someone watching from the tree line. I turned onto Elm. The houses here sat like tired soldiers in neat rows. Street lamps sputtered off in the storm, leaving me to rely on my headlights alone. At number 14, the porch light blinked in time with my engine. The mailbox drooped under the weight of water. I hopped out, boots soaking, and stepped onto the porch. Wood groaned under my weight. I raised my flashlight. Beam trembled over the peeling paint, and the wind chime made of spoons rattled against the door frame. I knocked. "Mrs. Harper? Franklin County, it's me." No answer. The door was unlocked. I sidestepped in, the smell of damp carpet and roses hitting me. The living room's lamps were off. I reached for the breaker panel by the stairs and flipped the main switch. The house flooded with light, yellow and soft, like a Sunday morning in April. The radio in the corner clicked on to static. I wandered through until I found the kitchen sink. Water still dripping from the ceiling over Mrs. Harper's pots and pans. The power line outside must have frayed overhead, leaking electricity into the wet wood of the roof. "Mrs. Harper," I called again. Behind me, a slow creak on the stairs. I spun. Nothing but the hall. I climbed the stairs. Carpet muffled each step. At the hallway's end, the closet door stood ajar. A low hum filled my chest, not mechanical. I pressed my ear to the frame, then a whisper, so soft I thought the storm muted it. It said my name, Sergeant. Cold ran down my spine. I pushed open the door, empty, just coats and some cleaning supplies. Yet the hum remained, pulsing. I backed out and glanced down toward her bedroom. The door lurched midway open, pale light spilling out. I approached, hand on holster. The room smelled like lavender and old linen, bedspread soaked where no rain touched it. On the nightstand, her phone lay face up, screen lit with a dial tone. I reached for it. The radio in the living room came alive, blasting a crack of static, drowning out my heartbeat. I dropped the phone. In the mirror across from the bed, I saw movement behind me. A shimmer, like rain on glass falling inside the reflection but not in the room. My breath hitched. I swung the flashlight to the doorway. No one. I checked the floor. Boot prints traced from the window to the bedside, stopping inches from my own. My pulse raced as I grabbed the phone off the floor. The dial tone sounded urgent in my ear. I pressed redial. Dispatch cracked back. "Unit 7? My voice came out ragged. "Ma'am, this house is clear. No sign of Mrs. Harper, just someone's been here." I closed my eyes. Dizziness like after images from a flashbang. When I looked up, the boots I'd traced had vanished from the carpet. I bolted for the door, tripped, and caught myself on the frame. The hallway lights stuttered and died, leaving me under the single glow of the bedroom lamp. The house sank into silence. I heard the storm lull as though it were waiting. My skin crawled with the suspicion that I wasn't alone. I drew my weapon and thanked God for the thunder that gave me an excuse to start firing if anything moved. My radio sputtered once more, finally dying. I stood in that beam of lamplight, trembling, boots wet, badge heavy on my chest. The storm outside waited like a judge. I flicked off the lamp, and the night inside the house went completely dark. I don't know how long I stood there. My ears strained for breathing that wasn't mine. Then, a soft click. The door at the end of the hall, the one I'd locked on my way in, swung shut. No handle turned, no footstep passed. Just that decisive click. That's when I realized the storm had never left Elm Street. It had followed me inside, found a way through the wires and walls, and into this house. And something in here was waiting for me. My hand shook as I eased my back against the wall, the pistol's weight suddenly both reassuring and absurd. Every instinct screamed at me to bolt, but something deeper rooted me in place. Was it curiosity, or that same knot in my gut telling me to stay and face whatever this was? My ears strained in the silence, broken only by distant drip, drip, drip of water leaking through the ceiling. I forced my breathing to slow, counting 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, letting the rhythm steady me. I squared my shoulders, then clicked on the flashlight clipped to my belt. The narrow beam danced over peeling wallpaper and warped floorboards, landing on the closed bedroom door. I could feel eyes on me, though I saw no one. I took a single step, then another, each footfall muffled by the damp carpet. The chasm between my teeth didn't close, not with adrenaline, not with fear. A low hum began in my chest. Not in my ears, but inside my sternum, a vibration like the thrum of a heavy engine with missing cylinders. I pressed a hand to my chest, my spine arched. The hum pulsed again, louder, and I realized with a sick twist that it matched the faint sizzle I'd heard in the attic when I first arrived, something electrified, alive, straining behind walls. I clicked the flashlight toward the ceiling. A single loose board shifted, and a sliver of dull gray light seeped through the attic hatch. My pulse thundered. I holstered my gun and found the small folding knife I carried for evidence collection. The blade's edge was cold, smooth. I took off the cover of the attic hatch, the thin wood splintering. Then, without thinking, I climbed the ladder. 2 rungs, 3 rungs, my boots scraping the side. Each step felt like a decision, but there was no turning back now. The attic smelled of damp pine and old insulation. I pressed the blade into my free hand and sliced at the fraying rope that held the hatch closed. It tore with a dry crack, and the hatch dropped open with a groan. I shone the light up. Nothing. Just a narrow crawl space, the boards stained brown with age. But the hum rose, as if the house itself was straining to be heard. I dropped through the hatch onto my knees. Sniffing, I realized it wasn't pine or insulation that I smelled. It was burned wiring, acrid and clinging to the air. I traced the light along the joists until it landed on a bundle of frayed cables, sparking, pulsating with blue-white arcs. They ran along a rudimentary channeled path, disappearing into an old radio tuner panel built into the far wall. The panel rattled, as if in time with a hidden speaker behind it. My heart pounded. I knew where this was going. To the living room radio, the kitchen breaker, the wiring that brought power back on when the storm crashed the grid. Someone had rigged the house like a trap, alternating power and death throbs of electricity, creating illusions of presence. But who? And why? A soft click behind me spun me around. The attic hatch had slammed shut. My flashlight beam cut against the lid, but the latch glowed copper under the lid, latched from the inside. I sprinted toward it and yanked. It wouldn't budge. My fingers bled from pressing against splintered wood. A whisper echoed down the ladder shaft. I could swear it was my own voice calling, "Sergeant." I pointed the beam at the wall beside the radio panel. The wallpaper was sliced, edges curling, revealing a hidden cavity. My fingers trembled as I peeled the paper away. Inside, in a shallow box, lay a battered tape recorder, its spool ticking, like a heartbeat. I ripped it free, cupped it in my hands, and pressed play. The recorder crackled to life. At first, static, then a voice, wavering and broken. "Please, help. Found something in the basement, can't get out." It cut off in a wet gasp. Then a series of scratches, like thumb on tape, and a scream that ended in a wet gurgle. The tape clicked empty. My blood turned to ice. In the back of my mind, a memory flickered. The whisper in the attic, the shape beyond the field, the man by the creek whose final breath had sounded like water filling his lungs. I pressed record and stood, wiping sweat from my brow. I had evidence of someone trapped, or someone who had been here, broken like these wires, using this old house to record their own demise. I shut off the recorder and jammed it in my coat pocket. My only thought was to find the basement. The stairs had to be here. I found a narrow door under the staircase and pried it open. Cold air billowed upward, carrying the stench of earth and mold. I clicked on my flashlight again and descended. 1 step, 2 steps, each foot placed carefully on a wooden stair that moaned. At the bottom, the beam landed on a stone wall slick with moisture. The hum here was a roaring pulse, drowning out my thoughts. I crept forward, the sleeve of my jacket brushing against something soft on the floor. I leaned in to inspect and felt a wet cloth. I yanked it up to reveal Mrs. Harper's phone. The screen cracked, still lit with that dial tone, but the handset lay a few inches away, soaked. I shone the light across the room. Rows of old cabinets lined the walls, battered and warped. In the far corner, an open hole in the ground led to a pit, half covered by a rotten plank. I knelt, looked in. Nothing but darkness and a faint drip at the bottom. But the flashlight reflected off something metallic, a worn police badge. I swallowed hard. Somebody had been down here. Somebody who wanted the station to find them. I reached out, grabbed the plank's edge, and pulled. It fell with a thud, and the flashlight plunged into the pit, illuminating the bottom. A pile of soggy papers, insurance forms, eviction, notices, buried the lower tiers. Among them, a chipped ceramic mug with a Maplewood PD insignia. I remembered Maplewood, a precinct 3 counties over. A precinct I'd worked with twice. The name on the mug, Detective. Andrea Lawson. My jaw clenched. She'd gone missing last year during a routine call in a storm. Case was officially closed, ruled runaway. But I'd always thought something didn't add up. Her partner had found her car empty, much like the sedan in the ditch. No footprints, no body, no explanation. I'd filed evidence reports, logged suspect interviews. The file sat in my vault, slowly gathering dust. Now I knelt in her basement, holding her badge in the fist of one hand and that recorder in the other. Then I heard it. A creak behind me. Slow, deliberate, like someone descending the stairs. My heart locked up. I snapped the beam upward. At the top, in the narrow doorway, stood a figure in a soaked raincoat. Head dropped so the brim of a hat hid the face. Lightning flashed through the stairwell window, illuminating the shape for a heartbeat. It was a woman. Tall, shoulders squared, hands empty but clenched. I swallowed, my own tongue heavy in my mouth. "Detective Lawson?" I rasped. She didn't answer. The storm's thunder rattled the foundation. The hum in the basement deepened, as if the house recognized her and stepped its own pulse up a notch. She started down the stairs, each step precise, echoing on the wood. My hand tightened on the pistol, but I didn't raise it. I couldn't. I was numb. My mouth opened, and I tried again. "Andrea?" She stepped into the light. The rain-drenched hat fell back, revealing pale skin that gleamed like moon-soaked pavement. Her eyes locked on mine, unblinking, fathomless. She didn't move. The recorder in my pocket ticked once, then silent. I heard my own heartbeat pulse one last time before she lifted a hand, long fingers dripping water, and pointed at me. My knees buckled. I stumbled back, nearly falling into the pit, but caught myself against the wall. Lightning flashed again, revealing her badge pinned to her chest, battered but unmistakable. Then the power surged. A brilliant arc crackled through the overhead wires, a flash so bright it seared my vision. The basement lights flickered alive in that instant. I saw her clearly, wet hair plastered to her skull, eyes reflecting every droplet of rain. And then, the lights died. Darkness swallowed the basement in a heartbeat. The hum halted, as though cut off. Silence pressed in so hard I thought my ears would burst. I fumbled for my light but felt only the damp stone wall. A wet breath grazed my ear, and the voice whispered so close I felt it on my neck. "You shouldn't have come." I stumbled backward, crashing into the pile of papers, my pistol clattering to the floor. A cold hand closed around my wrist. I heard it press the recorder's play button from my pocket. That familiar crackle and Andrea's voice. "Help, found something, in the basement." My scream was lost in the darkness. I hit the wall with both hands and slid down until I was crouched on the damp floor. The poker-flat barrel of my gun pressed against my thigh. My mind spun as the echo of Andrea Lawson's voice died in the darkness around me. I groped at my coat pocket, plucked out the battered recorder, and held it with shaking fingers. The tape was dead. No click, no hiss, just the unforgiving silence of stopped machinery. My breath fogged in a small cloud that hung in the beam of my malfunctioning flashlight, and I realized that whatever had been alive in this house had shut itself off at the same moment the lights died. I forced myself to my feet, leaning against the cold stone as the world tilted. My boots were caked with mud from the backyard trench. My uniform jacket was stiff with blood, almost certainly my own from where I'd bashed my hand on the hatch. Everything throbbed, the ache in my wrist, the sting in my palm, the dull pulse of my heart against ribs that felt ready to split. The basement door was somewhere behind me. I didn't dare descend further, but the weight of unanswered questions pulled me toward it. Something glittered in the corner of my eye, a pale shape, gleaming wetly. I swept the flashlight around. There, half buried under broken boards and debris, lay a badge. Not Andrea's, but mine. My own shield, the one I'd left hanging on my locker hours ago. The logo was scratched into the metal, jagged slashes like talons. I picked it up, perplexed. Why would I have dropped it here? My fingers felt numb around the cold steel. I flipped it over. On the back, someone had carved initials, A.L. My world lurched. Andrea Lawson's badge in my hand, and now my own, carved with her initials. The same initials that had been painted on her coffee mug, the ones I'd found in that hidden box under the insulation. It was a signature, a calling card, a confession, or a curse. I shoved the badge into my pocket and glanced at the pit again. The plank had been moved. I hadn't replaced it when I descended. Now, in the partial darkness, the opening yawned like a maw. I knew I'd have to face it if I wanted out. My breaths came ragged, each one sounding in my ears like thunder. Lightning flashed deep underground, a memory of the arc that had knocked out the lights. For an instant, the walls glowed silver, and I thought I saw something there, a silhouette, head bowed, standing at the rim of that pit. I yanked the basement door open. A shaft of pale moonlight stabbed into the house, illuminating the chaos. The rec room above had been stripped bare, chairs overturned, picture frames shattered, the couch torn open to reveal soggy stuffing and yellowed letters scrawled in ink that ran like tears from rain. I crouched and scooped up one of the letters. The paper was soaked, but I could make out fragments. The storm again. I tried to warn them. They don't listen. It whispers at night, wants to be heard. I'm sorry, Andrea, but I can't make it stop. My breath caught. The writer was pleading to Andrea. And now I was standing in Andrea's house, her basement, holding a letter she wrote about something that whispered in storms. A distant door slammed upstairs. Wood against wood, heavy. I drew my weapon, heart pounding like a jackhammer, and crept up the stairs toward the main floor. Each step was a drumbeat in my ears. The hallway greeted me with its familiar peeling wallpaper and cracked linoleum, but now it felt alien, warped by terrible memory. I passed the open closet, once home to her voice recorder, and kept going. I reached the kitchen, where the overhead light flickered on for a second before dying again. The wind whipped through the broken window, carrying with it the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves. On the counter lay Andrea's notebook, its leather cover soaked but intact. I flipped it open to the last entry. They know I'm here. They find me through the wires. I thought hiding the recorder in the wall would keep them out, but the storm finds every hiding place. I don't dare leave. If you find this, Sergeant, beware the thunder. It ended there. The notebook slipped from my fingers, pages fanning out on the tile. I heard it before I saw it, the soft scuff of footwear on laminate. I spun, flashlight jittering, and caught a glimpse of a raincoat disappearing through the living room into the foyer. My chest seized. This was no simple haunting. Something alive, dressed in the uniform of a storm, stalking me through her mansion. I chased after the sound, rounding the corner into the foyer. The front door was ajar, torn from its hinges. Rain washed the threshold in floodwater. Outside, the world was a gray blur of wind and water, trees bending under the storm's fist. And standing on the porch, drenched, silhouetted by a flicker of lightning, was the same figure I'd seen in the ditch back on County Road D. Only now, I recognized the broad shoulders leaning against the doorframe, the hat pulled low, and the badge pinned to the chest beneath the raincoat. It was Lawson, but not alive. Her skin was slick and pale, eyes hollowed by too many storms. She reached out, arm extended, and spoke a single word that cut through the gale. Remember. Thunder shook the ground as if the sky were splintering. Lawson's form dissolved into the rain, ripples of water where she'd stood, leaving only the echo of her voice. I stumbled back, a hand over my heart, trying to hold on to the memory of her features, the sound of her plea, the weight of that badge. And then, over the roar of the storm, I heard a different voice. Dispatch, crackling through the radio. Unit 7, respond, do you copy? The line buzzed. I fumbled for the mic. Dispatch, this is Sergeant. My own name stuck in my throat. My blood felt too cold to flow. Behind me a drip, drip, drip. The paint on the wall chipped and peeled away, as if something clawed at it from within. I whipped around. The entryway wall was crumbling, revealing glints of copper wiring snaking through the plaster like veins. Rainwater poured through the cracks, and through the skeletal openings I saw something moving. Shadow figures skittering behind the boards, their forms half formed by the flicker of lightning outside. I dropped the notebook and the recorder and drew a breath so sharp it felt like a blade. The storm had followed me into this place. Layered on every wall and floorboard had become these voices, these specters. Nothing in my training covered this. No protocol for ghosts born of electricity and rain. I clicked my radio off. I wouldn't call for backup. They'd come and burn this house to the ground looking for rational causes, but they'd miss the deeper truth. My flashlight died then, just a sputter and a last pale glow, and I was left in darkness except for the storm's distant glow. I watched the wires pulse behind the plaster, an electrical heartbeat wanting to break free. I heard a whisper, not Andrea's nor mine, but a chorus of voices rising, lamenting, pleading. They sounded like rain itself. Sergeant, remember, remember. I reached inside my coat for the badge, the one carved with AL, and held it out into the black. In that instant, a beam of lightning struck the front porch, illuminating the foyer in stark white. I saw dozens of shadowed hands pressed against the inside of the walls, fingers splayed, as if all those lost calls for help, all those storms, had been trapped here. And among them, I saw her, Andrea Lawson, face pressed to the plaster, mouth open in a silent scream. The thunder cracked one final time, and the house shuddered. The wires exploded in sparks behind the plaster, and the upstairs chandelier rattled, sending shards of light dancing across the walls. I felt the ground tremble. I stood, clutching the badge, the storm's voice roaring in my ears, the echo of Andrea's last plea burning in my mind, to remember. Then I stepped forward, into the heart of the house, ready to see what it had become, and what I must become if I was ever going to end this. I stepped past the threshold into the foyer, my boots leaving wet prints on the warped wood floor. The badge was tight in my fist, a weight both familiar and alien. I could feel the house breathing around me, each exhale a whisper of memory, each inhalation a shudder of rain seeping through cracked windows. The chandelier above rattled in its chain, casting fractured glints of light that danced across shredded wallpaper and torn drapes. The scent of ozone and old wood hung heavy, like the remnant of a storm that had never left. I didn't know where to go first. The front door yawning behind me, storm-lashed and splintered, tempted flight, but something deeper rooted me to the threshold. I moved forward, eyes scanning for the next clue. The living room lay ahead, couches ripped open, the stuffing strewn like discarded papers in a gale. The floorboards creaked under my weight, sounding in my ears like a chorus of weary sighs. In the corner, the antique radio sat perched on a broken stand, its dial frozen at the station Andrea had tried to reach, the one that would never answer. I approached slowly, hand still on my holster, and ran a fingertip across the cracked linen covering its speaker. The mesh was wet, adhesive failing where moisture had pooled. I bent down, pressing an ear to the grill. At first, nothing but my own pulse pounding in my skull. Then faint, so faint I thought I imagined it, a rhythm, like the hum in her basement wires, pulsing in time with distant thunder. I straightened and flicked the small toggle switch. The radio clicked, static pouring out in a wash of white noise. I turned the dial slowly, hunting. Between stations, buried beneath the hiss, I caught the tail end of a voice, distorted, pitched low. A stifled sob, then a whisper, "Help me, please." The volume cranked itself higher, as if drawn by that plea, until the static resolved into a final, urgent message, "They're here." Then deathly silence and the radio popped off the air. My skin crawled. I straightened, letting the moment settle. The storm outside rattled the glass, and I realized the front storm windows had shattered, the panes now jagged edges gleaming in the gloom. I remembered the hallway leading back to the kitchen, past the closet, past the attic hatch, but I also knew Andrea's bedroom lay off to the side, where her last entries had been written. I turned toward that door. The hallway was narrow, the gloom thick. My flashlight's beam offered a narrow tunnel of clarity, the rest swallowed in shadows. Doors on either side bore scuffs and gouges, but only one stood ajar. Her bedroom. I approached, hand sliding along the wall's flaking paint. As I neared the open door, the air grew colder, the hairs on my neck rising. In the doorway I paused, noticing the faint shimmer in the air. Rainfall persisting in a sliver of space that shouldn't have been there. It fell in place, a column of droplets dancing in midair, defying logic. I swallowed hard. Inside the room, the bed had been stripped, a neat indentation still pressed into the mattress. Against the far wall, a desk lay overturned, papers scattered across the floor. Among them, a single sheet lay face up, pinned by a rain-soaked photograph of Andrea. The note read, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. But I'm listening now. Always listening." I recognized her handwriting, jagged, rushed, but unmistakable. My breath caught. I knelt and picked up the photo. Andrea, younger, in uniform, smiling with a partner I didn't recognize. The name stamped on the back. Officer Catherine Rhodes. Rhodes, another missing officer. I looked up. The desk's overturned drawer lay open, and inside, a bundle of letters tied with string, frayed by moisture. I untied them, scanning the top envelope's scrawled address. To Catherine, my only friend in the storm. The letter inside spoke of long nights on patrol, of voices on the wind, of rain that carried secrets through the wires. They speak through the thunder, it read. I can't stop them. I fear they will drown us all. My heart pounded. I shoved the letters into my coat pocket, replacing the photo. I needed to find Rhodes's file, cross-reference, piece together what Andrea had tried to warn me about. My mind raced with every missing officer case I'd touched. Miller from Ashford, Bennett from Pine Valley. Each had vanished during storms, their cars found empty on flooded back roads, their footsteps never traced beyond a few wet boot prints. I realized then they were all here, somehow, woven into this house's walls. A sudden noise, metal scraping against wood, made me jolt upright. I spun, sweeping the beam across the floor. A dark shape slid behind the wardrobe at the foot of the bed. My pulse jumped into my throat. I raised my gun, calling, "Who's there?" No answer, only the whisper of wind and the distant thunder rolling over the roof. I edged toward the wardrobe, flashlight and pistol aimed in unison. Every instinct screamed caution. I placed a hand on the handle and flung it open. Inside, empty. Just a tangle of clothes, yellowed and damp. I exhaled, rubbing my temple. This was madness, chasing ghosts in a storm-drenched house. And yet, a drawer at the bottom of the wardrobe lay slightly open, as though recently used. I crouched and pulled it free. Inside, a small recorder, slim, black, identical to the one I'd found in the attic wall. Its screen lit up as I tilted it, displaying a new, unexpected recording. Track 7. My finger hovered, then pressed play. Static churned, then 3 words, clipped and urgent. Follow the wires. The playback cut out. My flashlight flickered. I looked up and realized the wardrobe itself was no longer against the wall. I had turned it, or someone had. Now, a narrow passage revealed itself behind it, carved into the plaster. I pressed my ear to the opening. At first, nothing but the house settling. Then, faintly, the hum again, the electrical heartbeat that threaded through every room, every floorboard, every snap of thunder. I clicked off the recorder and slipped it into my coat. I stood, back against the wardrobe, hearing a shift behind me. The clothes inside stirred, as though brushed by invisible hands. I swallowed, steeling myself. I stepped through the wardrobe opening. The passage was tight, barely wide enough for me to squeeze through, walls slick with condensation. I shone my flashlight along the floor. Cables snaked through the trench like black veins. I crouched and placed a hand on one. Vibrating, alive. The pulse ran through me and I felt a cold thrill. I followed the cables deeper into the wall, every step a test of nerve. The hum grew louder, each beat matching my racing pulse. Behind me, the wardrobe clicked shut in the corridor, sealing me into a tunnel of wires and whispers. The passage sloped down, the air growing damp and musty. I pressed forward on my hands and knees, tracing the wires with my fingertips. First a single strand, then a bundle, disappearing into a metal grate at the end of the crawlspace. I crouched to examine it. A service panel, its cover loose, rainwater dripping through the cracks. I pushed aside a wire and slipped inside. The grate gave way under my weight, and I dropped into a narrow crawl under the floor joists. My flashlight beam caught wooden beams overhead and pipes dripping along the ceiling. The cables I'd followed ran out of sight, behind a knee-high wall of insulation. I began to crawl, feeling my way through the gloom. The damp insulation clung to my sleeves. Sawdust filled my nostrils. I thought of Andrea, of Catherine Rhodes, of every soul lost in this storm. And I asked myself, could I find the heart of this house's darkness, trace it to its source, and bring it into the light? Ahead, the passage opened into a wider space, a basement room I hadn't seen before. My flashlight flickered as I emerged. The room was circular, walls lined with shelves of rusted tools, oil cans, and coils of wire. In the center stood a makeshift altar, a wooden chair facing an overturned desk, upon which lay a blood-stained map of the county. Pins marked each location where an officer had vanished. Beneath the map, scrawled in dark red, was a single word: home. Above it, cables snaked up to the ceiling, where they disappeared into a hole sealed by rotting boards. Electricity crackled softly, humming through the wires, vibrating the floor under my knees. And on the chair sat an umbrella, dry as bone, ribs bent inward, its handle pointing directly at me. My chest tightened. I reached out with a trembling hand and touched the umbrella's fabric. It was cool, almost metallic. Around me, the lights flickered in rhythm with the storm outside. Snap, snap, snap. The cables overhead hummed louder, as if testing their limits. I drew in a breath, steadying myself. Then, from somewhere deep in the walls, I heard a voice, not whispered this time, but clear, a calm, authoritative drawl. "Sergeant, you've done well to come this far." My pistol hand quivered. I swung the beam around the room. No one. The voice echoed again. "But do you understand why?" The lights snapped off, plunging me into pitch darkness. The hum stopped. Silence swallowed the room. My flashlight clicked off in my grip. I stood frozen, the umbrella's cold handle against my palm, the map's crimson word burning in my mind. Then, above me, the cables burned bright for one instant, like lightning trapped in wood, and I saw, etched onto the ceiling in dripping wax, another single word: remember. And in that moment I understood the storm wasn't just outside, it was here, in this house, in every lost officer, in every hum of electricity, in every shattered window. It wasn't over. It would never be over. I didn't move, I couldn't. And somewhere behind me, the umbrella clicked open. The world twisted into absolute silence the moment the umbrella clicked open behind me. My skin prickled, every nerve ending screaming as if the storm itself had shoved a hand into my chest and squeezed. I dared not breathe. The room's air grew thick, an electric haze settling over everything, cables humming faintly again, wet boards exuding the smell of ozone and decay. I turned slowly, flashlight dead in my other hand, and stared at the umbrella. It stood upright on its own, ribs splayed in a near-perfect circle, casting long, serrated shadows against the walls. Beneath it lay the map. Drenched, corners curling, the county's outline distorted by water stains. The pins marking vanished officers glowed darkly in the gloom, as though the holes punched into the wood were bleeding. Above them, that single word, home, seemed to pulse, alive with intent. I swallowed, tongue thick. My hand found my holster, but the gun felt alien, too heavy and useless. What could steel do against a force woven into wiring and rain, stitched into the very bones of this house? I realized then that I'd been hunting ghosts, but the ghosts had been hunting me back. Every missing officer, every severed patrol, every unanswered call had been a summons, leading me here, binding me to this place. The cables overhead snapped with a crack, and sparks rained like fireflies in the darkness. The umbrella's fabric fluttered, though there was no breeze. I stepped back, boots slipping on the wet floor, heart pounding so hard it felt as though it might burst free of my ribcage. The overhead wires snapped again, and a guttering glow lit the room for a heartbeat. I saw dozens of faces pressed against the plaster walls, eyes wide, mouths open in silent pleas and screams, half-formed shapes of those trapped between life and storm. They flickered out as the light died. The hum ceased. Silence reclaimed the room. Only the umbrella stood, waiting. I sank to my knees, hands on the map, ink smearing beneath my fingers. The paper tore. I reached past it, touching the floorboards beneath. They were warm, oddly warm, and pulsed under my palm. An irregular beat, unmistakably alive. The foundations of the house had a heartbeat. They were breathing. They had been waiting. A whisper slipped into the air, softer than the hum, more insistent than thunder. Find the heart. My head snapped up. Find the heart. No voice but my own echoed in the hush. I scanned the ceiling, walls, floor. Everywhere, wires plunged into darkness, into hidden cavities beneath the boards. The altar chair, the map, the umbrella, all had pointed me deeper, toward the heart of this storm. Whatever it was, it lived here, powered by the rain's electricity and the lost souls who answered the call. I rose unsteadily, tossing the map aside. My boots carried me to the center of the room, beneath the umbrella's rib cage. I crouched, pried up a board, and plunged my hand into the wet earth below. My fingertips brushed something smooth and cold, a rounded metal surface embedded in the soil. I hauled it free. A tarnished pocket watch, its face cracked, hands frozen at 3:12. On its back was engraved one last name, Lawson. I stared at it, breath ragged. The watch ticked once, just once, then died. A final heartbeat. Then the wires above sang back to life, and the entire house shuddered, as though exhaling centuries of storms. The whisper returned, all around me. Join us. I snapped the watch shut, pressing it to my ear. Silence. Then I heard another heartbeat, my own, faster, thinner, and it echoed the pulsing of the wires. My reflection shimmered in the cracked watch glass. Eyes wide, pale skin glistening, rain-drenched uniform clinging to me as though I'd never left the storm outside. I realized then that I was no longer just a visitor. I had become part of this house's storm, another echo in the wires, another whisper in the rain. My footsteps on the boards, my voice on the scanner, my blood seeping into the wood, all had bound me here. I could feel the pulse of the earth beneath the floorboards, the static charge in the air, the drip, drip, drip of water falling through every crack. I stood, pocket watch in hand, and faced the umbrella. Its ribs glowed faintly in the pulsing light. I knew what I had to do. I placed the watch in the center of the map on the floor, aligning the crown with the county seat. Then I stepped back and whispered, "I remember." At that word, the umbrella collapsed inward, ribs folding with a soft click, and the cables above let loose a surge of sparks that rushed down the walls like waterfalls of light. The room filled with the roar of 1,000 storms converging. I shielded my face, eyes stinging, and when I looked again, the map lay blank. Pins gone, ink vanished, the word home erased as though washed clean by a deluge. The watch lay still, cold in the soil. The faces in the walls blinked away. The house exhaled a final breath. The wires fell silent. The air cleared, smelling of fresh rain and new beginnings. The front door creaked open, revealing a path of dry ground under a starless sky. I stepped toward it, leaving the umbrella bones and the map of ghosts behind. Each footfall on the threshold felt like leaving a piece of myself behind. When I reached the porch, the storm was gone. No wind, no rain, only the distant rumble of clouds receding over the hills. In my hand, I held Detective Lawson's watch, its hand still. I tucked it into my pocket, shoulders heavy with memory. I looked back at the silent house, storm-battered, empty of its ghosts, waiting once more for the next time the skies opened. I turned and walked away, the night air cool against my soaked skin. And in the quiet that followed, I carried with me one final question that would echo every time the rain began to fall again. When the next storm comes, will I answer its call? I can still hear the wipers scraping against the windshield, an insistent rhythm that felt like a countdown to something I couldn't name. It was the kind of night when the sky gave up entirely. No stars, no moon, just an unbroken sheet of rain so heavy it felt alive. The patrol car's engine hummed beneath me, headlights cutting white arcs through the sheets of water, illuminating tire tracks filled with churning water that swallowed the edge of the road. I sat behind the wheel in my uniform, soaked through to the skin, radio dead silent except for the distant murmur of static. I wanted to believe this was just another routine check, but the instant I rolled past the closed blinds of Mrs. Hawkins's farmhouse, I knew it wasn't. Dispatch had sent me here at 1:44 a.m., code 1041, welfare check on a reported break-in. The call was vague. Neighbor heard glass shatter, then nothing. No alarm, no screaming, just the rain hammering the roof and the sudden hush that followed. I turned off the cruiser's red and blue lights so only the low beam glowed, then killed the engine. In moments like these, the world beyond the car felt miles away. You're alone with the rain and the road, and whatever shadow lies just beyond the cone of your flashlight. I unclipped my radio mic and keyed up. Unit 6-2, approaching the Rogers place. House secure so far. No signs of forced entry on the back door. I waited for a response. Silence. I waited again. Silence. My breath felt loud in my ears, hot and ragged against the cold air. I slipped out, door thudding closed behind me, and the rain slapped my shoulders like slaps to the face. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I crossed the gravel drive, each footprint a little pool of mud that spat water up around my boot. The porch light was off, but lightning flickered the horizon, painting the farmhouse in staccato white. I climbed the 2 steps and knocked, once, twice, then let my shoulder do the work. The door held, heavy oak resisting. I radioed, copy that, 6-2, no entry. Door locked. On a night this wet, your senses betray you. Everything echoes. A drip from the roof's gutter sounded like footsteps. My flashlight beam caught the glint of something metal at my feet, a single brass key, lying in a puddle on the welcome mat. Rusty, bent like it had been dropped in a hurry. I stared down at it, my heart clogging in my chest. I'd been on the force 20 years and I'd never seen a house key left on a mat during a break-in. Who would leave the key behind? Who would break in but not stay long enough to lock the door? With the key in one hand and my radio in the other, I stepped back. I hefted the flashlight higher, sweeping the yard. The cornfield at the back rustled in the wind, stalks bending under the rain. Somewhere out there, something moved. My gut tightened. I called dispatch one more time. 6-2 to dispatch. I found a key at the front door. No forced entry, but I'm going to step inside to check anyway. The reply came at last, tinny and distant. Copy, 6-2, back up en route. I turned the key in the lock. No resistance. The door swung open with a groan. Inside, the hallway light was on, bulbs humming, water streaming down the stairs. I stepped in, boots leaving muddy tracks on the hardwood floor, and the door clicked shut behind me. The moment the threshold closed, the rain's roar faded to an almost comforting drip. I felt exposed, naked in the hush. The foyer was cold, colder than outside. My breath caught in my throat. Every flood of lightning highlighted details that seemed impossible. A muddy handprint smudged on the wall beside the staircase, drips of water still forming at the fingertips. Footprints crossing the polished floor and bare feet leading toward the living room. A wooden chair overturned, leg splintered like someone kicked it in panic. But no blood, no sign of violence, just objects displaced as if someone left in a hurry. I flicked my flashlight left to right, sweeping over family photos on the mantel, smiling faces in Sunday best, all eyes looking toward me. The rain's reflection in the glass made them shimmer, like they were alive and watching. My heart throbbed against my ribs. I forced forward, each step echoing. In the living room, the couch cushions were soaked, fabric darkened by water pouring from a leak in the ceiling. I could hear the slow drip, 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 counting the seconds. The windows were closed tight, but the rain found its way through a crack in the wall beside the window frame, forming rivulets across the windowsill. I knelt to follow the flow. The water led to an open vent in the floor, metal cover removed and set aside. I peered inside, darkness, endless, like a yawning pit. My flashlight beam didn't penetrate far. I stood and turned toward the kitchen archway. The linoleum floor was wet, and footprints, smaller now, led past the sink toward the back door. I walked after them. The back door was unlocked, paint chipped. I felt for the handle and eased it open. The rain rushed back in, colder wind pushing droplets at my face. Through the door frame I saw the porch light flicker, illuminating a single set of footprints leading across the field toward the woods. Bare footprints, now half erased by fresh rain, but enough to follow. I hesitated. My radio buzzed, backup arriving, unmarked gray SUV turning onto the drive. Ramirez would be here any second. I stepped onto the porch, water sloshing around my boots, and shut the door behind me, key still in the lock. 80. The cold snap of metal against the jamb felt final. I followed the footprints, each step sinking into mud deeper than the last. The cornstalks arched overhead, whispering secrets as I passed. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and something else, something metallic, like old pennies or blood too diluted to see. The path narrowed until I emerged at the tree line. I aimed my flashlight into the gloom and noticed them. Wooden stakes buried in the ground, arranged in a loose circle 12 feet across. The stakes were worn, their tops charred. Between them, something flickered on the ground. A cell phone, screen cracked, still lit with a blinking text message notification, "Help me." My breath caught. I raised the phone, rain drumming over it, and saw the last message. "Please, hurry, can't see them." No sender displayed. I wiped the mud off the screen and hit reply, but my fingers trembled. I looked up. 13 steps beyond the circle, at the edge of the trees, the cornstalks had been bent inward, forming a tunnel. A shape stood just inside it, tall, hunched, coated in mud. I aimed my flashlight. The beam wavered as I gripped the torch tighter. My radio lit up with static. "Unit 6-2, do you read?" The transmission cut off, replaced by a low crackle. The shape in the tunnel shifted slightly, too quick. I hit the button. "Dispatch, I need..." Nothing. Radio dead. My heartbeat pounded in the sudden silence. I took a step toward the tunnel entrance, boots crunching broken corn beneath them. The rain felt distant now, as if the circle of stakes had sealed me away from the world. The shape leaned forward, and I saw long strands of hair matted across its face. Not human hair, thick, dark vines twisting together. It tilted its head, listening before it began to move, and my legs locked in place. Some calls don't end with sirens fading into the distance. And in that silence, I realized I may never leave this field. The rain had nearly stopped by the time I forced myself to blink. If the wind had died down, I couldn't tell. My ears still rang with the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in the silence. I took a breath and stepped forward, each boot sinking into the muddy earth. The cornstalk tunnel seemed to breathe around me, stalks brushing wet against my coat, whispering in voices I couldn't make out. My flashlight's beam trembled, illuminating slick leaves overhead before settling on the figure in the shadows. I raised the beam higher, heart in my throat. The thing shifted again. No human shape, more, an amalgamation of torn cloth and river weeds, head low under the stalks. A hand emerged, long fingers coated in mud and what looked like snipped bits of black fabric. It beckoned slowly, not with an eager wave, but with a deliberate curl of the wrist, as though it expected me to follow. My training screamed at me to hold position, call for backup, fall back to solid ground. But something, maybe desperation, maybe the echo of that text message, pulled me in. I took one step. The mud grabbed at my pants, tugging my leg below the knee. I yanked free, stabbing the flashlight more insistently into the tunnel. The fingers twitched again, then withdrew, beckoning faster. I swallowed and stepped in, mud squelching at my feet, the broken corn crackling under each boot. The air felt constricted, thicker, scented with wet soil and something else I couldn't name. My breath came in short gasps. The beam bounced along the tunnel walls, stalks pressed together overhead, droplets falling in slow arcs, and farther in, the thin sliver of greenish outdoor light dimming until it vanished. Then I saw it. Footprints in the packed earth of the makeshift path, 2 sets. One, mine, fresh and deep. The other, smaller, shallower but older, as if made hours ago, now partly filled by mud. The sole pattern was unfamiliar, a series of tiny triangles carved into rubber. I squatted to trace it with a gloved hand. The prints led past a dead scarecrow, rotten straw spilling from its sleeves into a small clearing I hadn't noticed before. I reached the opening and shined the beam through. The clearing was circular, about 10 feet across, and at its center the ground had been churned into loose soil, as though something had been digging. Shards of corn stalks lay broken around the edge. The muddy footprint in the center was fresh. I could count the triangles clearly, each one filled with last night's dried mud. I felt the hair stand on the back of my neck. I radioed, handheld clutched uselessly in my fist. "Dispatch, this is 6-2. Nothing. I tried again, then stomped the mic button in frustration. Only static answered. I flicked the switch. Dead. The cruiser's radio must have gone out of range or someone else cut it. My throat tightened. I crouched to inspect the churned earth and saw something glinting at the edge of the hole. A small, rectangular metal object. I pried it free with the tip of my boot. My flashlight landed on a tarnished police badge. No number, no name, just the seal of a county that didn't exist. Rainwater pooled in its creases, but the engraving was clear. I stared at it until a cold sweat broke across my scalp. A sudden crack behind me turned me sharp. I spun, flashlight slicing through the dark. The figure crouched at the far side of the clearing, motionless. Its vines for hair hung limp, its body swaying slightly as though rippling with the wind. It tilted its head, no eyes I could see, just the suggestion of a face under dripping strands. Then it turned and vanished into the cornstalks with a speed that made my chest tighten. I rose, heart hammering, and almost fell when the ground gave way beneath my foot. The dirt collapsed into a shallow pit, one side sloping into a narrow trench I hadn't noticed. In the trench lay the cracked cell phone, screen dark now, no longer blinking. I picked it up, wiped the mud, and saw the message. Help me. But no timestamp, no sender. I checked my own watch, 2:03 a.m., but the phone's time read 11:17 p.m. The night's timeline had fractured. I slid the phone into my pocket and leapt back to the clearing's edge. scanning for the cop badge I'd dropped. It was gone. I spun in place, jacket sleeves brushing wet cornstalks, and then stopped dead. The stalks around me formed the word help, plain as day, in broken bent lines. 3 letters spelled across waist-high stalks. H by 3 shattered stalks, E by 4 swoops in the field, L twice. I swallowed, my pulse knocking at my temples. The rain had made the letters easy to miss until I was inside them. But the letters weren't new. They'd been there when I stepped in, only I subconsciously ignored them. Before I could draw another breath, a scream ripped from the direction of the farmhouse. Raw, jagged, human. I jerked my head toward the sound. It rose and fell, fading into the distance as though carried off by the wind. My skin crawled. The cornstalks trembled at the edges of the clearing, and I felt a presence shift behind me. I spun, raising my flashlight. The thing stood inches away, head tilted down so the vines shielded its unseen face. I could hear its breathing now, wet, raspy. I stifled a shout and forced my body to back away, beam locked onto its shape. It reached out, fingers brushing the air, and I stumbled over the trench edge, boots slipping. I hit the ground hard, mud spraying as I rolled out of the clearing. I struggled to my knees, flashlight clattering. The thing was gone. Only the carved help remained. Bent stalks marking its place, shivering in the rain. I heard another voice then, gravel grinding under tires, Ramirez's SUV pulling into view at the tree line. Relief flooded me so sudden I felt sick. I screamed hoarsely, waving my arms. "Over here!" I scrambled toward the cornstalk edge, treading broken corn and mud, chest heaving. But as I crest the field's boundary, I saw the SUV was empty. Doors wide, engine running, lights on. No Ramirez. I froze, vision blurring. The field beyond was empty. No car, no tracks except mine, now half vanished by the rain. Behind me, the farmhouse windows flickered. Not with lightning, but from a single candlelit glow, steady, unbroken. A silhouette passed at the back window, a woman's shape, face pressed to the glass. I blinked. When my flashlight settled, I saw she held the dry umbrella from earlier, open and dripping, covering her head as she stared out. I swallowed past the dryness in my throat. Then the silhouette dropped the umbrella. Glass shattered inside, the candle snuffed out, and the window went dark. I backed away, heart lodged in my throat, and heard the cell phone in my pocket vibrate. I pulled it out. The screen displayed one new message: "Turn around." I risked a glance behind me. The cornstalks had closed in, no path out, just walls of green. Above me, the sky opened with a crack of thunder. I pressed my back against the slick siding of the farmhouse and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The rain had fallen to a fine mist, leaving everything glazed and trembling. I peered across the yard, heart still rattling. But there was no SUV, no Ramirez, just the dull yellow glow pooling beneath the window where that woman's silhouette had vanished. My flashlight lay forgotten on the grass at my feet, its beam wobbling in and out of view. I crept toward it, each step a risk, and snatched it up, breath catching at every stale gust of wind that rattled the shutters. The farmhouse door before me was locked, had to be. I tried the knob. Cold metal slid with a hesitant creak, as though I hadn't closed it properly behind me when I first entered the clearing. My teeth ground together. Memories of steps in the cornfield, the carved help, the badge that disappeared. It all poured back so sharply it felt like heat on my lungs. I radioed again, muscle reflex. "Dispatch, 6-2, but the static spat back, mocking, dead as before. I forced the door open and ducked inside, boots squelching mud across the threshold. The hallway light flickered on, but nothing else moved. The floorboards groaned under my weight as I crossed to the kitchen, looking for any sign of life. Cabinets were ajar, dishes missing, and the sink still held that half-empty coffee mug, ringed with grime and stale grounds. I set the flashlight down beside it and caught my reflection in the window behind the sink. Eyes rimmed red, uniform streaked with mud, radio hanging limp at my hip. I barely recognized the face staring back, and then I heard it. A soft click from the far end of the hall. I swung the beam toward the staircase. The steps looked the same as before, but the photos on the wall had shifted. Portraits of the Rogers family, which had shown 2 kids on either side of a smiling mother, now depicted only the mother, alone, framed in black. I swallowed and stepped forward. "Mrs. Rogers," I called, voice hollow. "This is Deputy Carter." My name sounded distant, like someone else's. No answer. The silence pressed down, heavy as wet cloth. Lightning flickered through the window above the stairs, and I saw her, for an instant, standing at the top step, back turned, hair long and dark, wearing the same dress I'd glimpsed in the window. Then she was gone. I raced up the stairs, flashlight beam wrestling with shadows. The hallway stretched unnaturally long, walls narrowing as I passed. At the master bedroom door, I paused. Inside, the candle I'd seen earlier had been replaced by a puddle of wax on the dresser, and the bed was stripped bare. No sheets, no mattress, nothing but a wooden frame. My boot thudded against something on the floor. I bent and picked up a single sock, a child's sock, with muddy footprints inside. Something bumped the wall behind me, wood tapping wood, and I spun around. No one was there, but the air smelled of damp wool and something else. Fear. I pocketed the sock and backed out of the room, floorboards clicking underfoot. At the end of the hall was another door, one I hadn't noticed before, painted the same dull green as the walls. It was cracked open, a sliver of darkness within. I placed a hand on the knob. It was warm, pulsing beneath my glove. I eased it open. Inside was a closet-sized pantry, shelves empty except for jars coated in a gray mold. The back wall had been torn away, revealing a hidden crawl space. The opening was only big enough for someone to squeeze through. Rainwater dripped through the gap, pooling on the plywood floor. I shoved my flashlight through and saw claw marks on the underside of the boards and droplets leading deeper into the black. A low scraping sound came from within. My breath hitched. I braced one foot against the pantry's lip and slipped inside, crouching so the ceiling beams didn't scrape my helmet. The mud from my uniform dragged across the plywood and carried the scent of cornstalks in with me. I followed the faint scratch, descending into a narrow tunnel so tight I could hear my own blood pounding. Somehow, the air here was warmer, stale, and heavy with the smell of damp earth. Every few feet, I bumped against roots that had forced their way through the planks. I thought of the key I'd turned in that front door. It shouldn't have opened. I thought of the stakes in the field and that cell phone message that might have been a trap. And yet, here I was, drawing closer to whatever lay at the end. I reached the far end of the tunnel and pushed against a rotted hatch. It gave way with a groan and spilled me into another chamber, larger, carved out of the hillside behind the farmhouse. The roof was low but supported by rough-hewn beams. At the center, wet clay had been mixed with sawdust to form a crude altar, a wooden board stained dark and warped. On it lay a single photograph of the Rogers family, the children's faces scratched away. Beneath the photo, nails arranged in a spiral pattern pointed inward, each one dull and rusted. I knelt beside it, keeping my flashlight beam focused on the spiral. My heart throbbed so loud I could almost hear the echo in the confined space. As I leaned closer, I felt a hand on my shoulder, cold and impossibly dry through my raincoat. I froze, breath caught in my throat. I spun, shining the light up, and found no one, but raindrops began to patter down from a crack in the ceiling above. As each drop hit the altar board, the spiral seemed to move, as if the nails sank into the wood. My knee struck something on the floor, a small book bound in tattered fabric. I opened it with trembling fingers. The pages were blank, but on the inside cover was scrawled, "You are next." Behind me, the chamber door slammed shut with finality. I jumped to my feet and raced back toward the tunnel, but the hatch had closed and the wood was flush with the wall. I beat at it, flashlight clattering to the ground. The words, "You are next," echoed in my mind. Someone, or something, wanted me here, wanted me to find their message. My radio crackled to life with a burst of static so loud it made me wince. A voice, trembling, but not mine, whispered, "Don't leave me." Then the radio died again. I slammed the handset against my helmet until it stopped. Feet scurried behind me in the darkness. I pried the hatch with my shoulder, wood splintering, and tumbled back into the pantry. Boots pounded overhead as I scrambled into the kitchen, where the faucet had turned itself on, water overflowing the sink and flooding the linoleum floor. The hallway beyond was slick, and the front door stood wide open, ragged draft blowing a strip of muddy towel inward. I didn't hesitate. I bolted out into the yard, sprinting across the slick grass toward my cruiser. The beams of light from the highway spilled through the trees, the real world waiting. As I unlatched the door, I glanced back at the farmhouse. In every window, a single candle had been lit, one by one, until the entire house glowed from within like a warning beacon. My keys dropped as I fumbled at the ignition, and the radio crackled again. "Run. Don't wait." But the voice was too distorted to recognize. I snatched the keys, slammed the cruiser into gear, and peeled away through the rain-smoothed field, leaving the Christmas glow of those candles behind. As I crossed the cornfield edge, the candlelight winked out, one window at a time, until the house was as dark and empty as it had been when I first arrived. The only witness to my flight was the soft pulse of the road beneath the tires, and the distant chime of the dashboard clock. 3:09 a.m. And somewhere in the passenger seat, the sock I'd pocketed rested against my thigh, damp and waiting. I gunned the engine without looking back, tires spinning in the soggy grass before traction caught and the cruiser shot forward. Rain-swollen fields blurred past my side window as I tore away from that house of horrors, clutching the damp sock like a charged talisman. The road ahead was empty, just the ribbon of asphalt slick under the headlights and the whisper of the post-storm wind rattling the wipers. My chest heaved, and the darkness outside felt alive, as if it pressed in on me from both sides of the road. I glanced down at the sock again. It was limp and cold, the muddy interior still clinging to my fingertips. I jammed it into the center console, snapping it shut, and reached for the radio. Static. Dead air. I slammed the mic, listening for any sign of life on the other end. Nothing. My reflection in the rearview mirror startled me. Eyes wide, cheeks hollowed, uniform plastered to my chest like a second skin. Sweat mingled with rainwater on my brow. I blinked hard. How far had I driven? My speedometer read 90. No traffic, no lights, only the glow of distant highway markers. My pulse pounded in my ears, louder than the rain had been. The sock throbbed in the console, and I remembered the note scrawled inside that book. "You are next." I swallowed, jaw tight, my stomach clenched. I didn't know what next meant. Next to disappear, next to die, next to lose my mind. But I knew it was a promise. placed on my path like those wooden stakes in the cornfield, an unspoken ritual calling me back. Up ahead, at the curve by the old mill sign, I flicked on the overhead map lamp. The soft yellow glow revealed my phone's abandoned message thread. Turn around. No timestamp, no sender. I thought of the farmhouse windows. First, a single candle, then dozens, lighting and dying like a heartbeat. The memory echoed in my mind. The silhouette, the child's sock, the phantom voice on the radio whispering, "Don't leave me." I punched the map lamp off and continued past the curve, hugging the fog line. That bend had always been death's doorstep. Local legend said a school bus full of kids had plunged into the creek there decades ago, though records never confirmed. At night, on a rainy curve like this, people swore they saw lights bobbing beneath the water. I had ignored those stories until now. My mind raced through possibilities. Some disturbed soul orchestrating these scenes, planting clues and setting the stage. Or something older, something rooted in the earth like those corn stalks, feeding on fear and rain. My training told me to turn back, call for help, and regroup at the station. But a deeper part of me, the part drawn to chaos, pushed me onward, curiosity burning hotter than dread. I muttered under my breath, "Show yourself." And the silence answered me. No tapping on the glass, no footprint on the hood, just the steady hum of the engine and the soft patter of residual rain. At the top of a slight rise, headlights winked into view. 2 cars parked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking in unison. They were the same model, dark sedans with unmarked plates, mirroring the one I'd found at Willow Bend. I braked, skidding until rubber squealed against wet pavement. I radioed, "Unit 6-2 to dispatch. 2 vehicles on the shoulder, no one around." Static. I killed the engine and opened the door into the mist. My boots hit the asphalt. The night air smelled of ozone and wet tar. I circled the first car, doors closed, engine off, interior dark. Through the window, I spotted a single umbrella on the back seat. Dry, pale green, its handle pristine. I eased around to the second sedan. Same thing, a dry umbrella, this one black. Both lay askew as if tossed there. No footprints in the gravel, no sign of life. Between the 2 cars, chalked on the pavement in large, messy letters, was a message. "Find me." The paint was fresh, its streaks glinting under the wiper's light. I stared at it, heartbeat echoing in my temples. I backed away as the mist swallowed the letters, but before I could step back into the cruiser, my phone buzzed. I fished it out with numb fingers. A new message. "I'm here, no name, no context." I looked up. The field beyond the road was empty, dark stalks rising to meet the sky. The nearby woods were silent, but the cornstalk silhouettes formed a tunnel I could almost see in the fog. My radio crackled suddenly. "P. Lease." It was my voice, soaked and fragmented, but distorted, like played through a broken speaker. I dropped the phone and static roared through the night. I ran back to the cruiser, fumbling for the keys. The doors locked behind me with a click that felt deliberate. Inside, I slammed the door shut, chest heaving. I turned the ignition. Nothing. Dead battery. The world outside was a gray smear of rain and fog. Behind me, I heard the hiss of a door opening. I jerked the beam of my flashlight over my shoulder through the windshield. There, framed in the dim yellow glow of my headlights, was the sock, dangling from the roof rack by a thread of mud-soaked fabric. And behind it, the shape of a person standing, head tilted like the woman in the window. No movement, no sound except my own ragged breathing. I fumbled for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The figure stepped closer, and I saw its eyes, not human, but reflective, gleaming like the cornstalk tunnels after rain. A whisper slithered through the glass, nearly lost beneath the wind. "Stay." I slammed my forehead against the steering wheel as the windshield wipers shuddered to life on their own, scraping once, then twice, before stopping mid-swipe, frozen. My breath caught in my throat. Outside, the rain began again, and the figure whispered from the darkness, louder this time. "You can't leave." I realized then that running away might be exactly what it wanted. I punched the wiper switch again. Nothing. In the rearview mirror, I saw movement behind me. Footsteps crossing the road, approaching the passenger side. I dialed my phone, hoping for service. No signal. Lightning cracked overhead, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw multiple figures, each holding an umbrella, dry and upright, walking toward the cruiser from every side. I closed my eyes and let out a scream that got swallowed by the storm, and when I opened them, I was upside down. Headlights buried in the ditch, the cruiser smoking, my hands pinned under the dashboard. The last thing I saw before the world went black was the dry umbrellas, bobbing in the sinking rain. I don't know how long I lay there, trapped beneath the twisted steel of my cruiser, rain hammering the roof so hard it felt like the world was ending. My head swam, every breath a battle. When I finally pried my hands free, blood slick on concrete, I crawled out through the shattered driver's side window. The ditch water lapped my calves, cold enough to snap me fully awake. The cruiser's headlights were still on, casting long slashes of light across the road. Smoke curled from the hood, mingling with the mist, but the engine was silent. I staggered to my feet, vision swirling. The figure was gone, but the umbrellas remained, half buried in the ditch, their canopies rigid and dry. I knelt and grabbed the nearest one, its handle warm in my hand, absurd against the soaked world. As I stood, I heard it, the soft scrape of rubber soles on asphalt. I spun, flashlight raised, but saw only the empty highway stretching into darkness. I took a step toward the road's center and noticed tire tracks leading back to the crash site. Not just my own, they were deeper, wider, as if a semi had rolled past. But there was no truck, no lights, nothing but imprints filled with murky water. I traced them with a gloved fingertip. The grooves felt fresh, and at their end was a single footprint, the same triangle-patterned sole I'd seen before. A low groan echoed behind me. I whipped around. The barn, at the edge of the field, long abandoned, had its sliding door ajar, revealing darkness within. A faint orange glow pulsed inside, like lantern light. My gut tightened. I tested every exit, every option, and all paths pointed there, the barn. My radio crackled unexpectedly. "Ease," the same broken whisper. My own voice, but distant, as if broadcast from elsewhere. My teeth chattered. I pressed the mic. "Dispatch, this is..." Nothing but static. Lightning snapped overhead, revealing dozens of umbrellas arranged on the barn floor. Handles buried in straw, canopies pointing skyward like a field of ghostly mushrooms. I counted them, 23. Each one different in size and color, but all bone dry no matter how long the storm had raged. Their arrangement formed a path leading deeper into the barn's belly. I stepped forward, mud sucking at my boots. The stale air smelled of hay and decay. As I entered, the umbrella's tips scraped the rafters, creating a hollow clatter that reverberated in my skull. I heard something else. A click, then the snap of a camera shutter. I swung the flashlight around, catching a flash of movement. A figure standing atop a hay bale at the far end, camera in hand, face obscured by the hood of a raincoat. "Show yourself," I demanded. voice hoarse. The figure lowered the camera slowly, lens reflecting my light. "You found them," it said, voice tinny, emotionless. "They were waiting." My heart stuttered. "Who? What are you talking about?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it pressed a button on the camera, and the flash went off again, bright, blinding. When my vision cleared, the camera and figure were gone, and in their place lay a scattering of Polaroid photos across the floor, each one face down. I picked the nearest and flipped it over. It was me, lying in the ditch, soaked and broken, hands reaching toward the camera. Beneath me was the sock, limp against my uniform. My expression was one of terror I didn't remember feeling. I flipped another. Standing under the tree line, flashlight angled on that first umbrella in the clearing. Another showed the boots in the foyer, the mud print silhouettes. The captions were scrawled in blood-red ink on the white border. "Found you. Listened. Next." My skin crawled. I dropped the photos. The barn door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into pitch black, save for the weak beam of my flashlight. The umbrellas loomed like silent sentinels around me. Rainwater dripped through the gaps in the roof, but none landed on the umbrellas. Their canopies remained unnaturally dry, and between them I saw footprints in the straw, one set fresh, one set ancient, worn down to ghost outlines. They led toward a trapdoor in the floorboards I hadn't noticed before. I knelt by the trapdoor, unhooked its latch, and the floor collapsed inward. A narrow shaft plunged into darkness. My flashlight beam pierced only the first few feet, revealing damp wood and twisting roots. I swallowed, fingers numb. The radio crackled again. "Don't let go." "Who is this?" I shouted into the void. No reply. I took off my jacket, wrapped the umbrella in the hood, and slid into the trap door. The wood splintered as I dropped 10 feet onto a bed of straw in a low cavern beneath the barn. My legs buckled under me. For a moment I lay there, chest heaving, breath visible in the cold air. Then I heard it. Whispers in the dark, like dozens of voices speaking at once, rising and falling with the drip of unseen water. I rose, flashlight shaky. The cavern walls were rough-hewn stone, etched with symbols I didn't recognize. Circles intersecting triangles, arcs slicing through runes. My pulse thundered. Each symbol had streaks of mud like someone, or something, had traced them with fingers. At the center of the far wall was a recessed alcove, in which lay a single object, my badge, the one issued to me 19 years ago when I first joined the force. It was scratched beyond recognition, the nameplate gouged away. I pressed forward, heart in my throat. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me. I stepped into the alcove. Beneath my old badge was a cracked photograph. Me and my partner Martinez, taken last Christmas, both of us smiling, untouched by mud or fear. But beneath our faces, someone had scrawled in the same red ink, "Abandoned." A hand, cold as stone, grabbed my shoulder. I spun, sweeping the beam across the cavern. Figures stood at the edges, dozens of them. Each in uniform, each holding an umbrella closed at their side, the handles resting on the ground. Their faces were hidden in shadows, eyes glinting like wet glass. They surrounded me in a ring, silent watchers. I swallowed. "What do you want?" One figure stepped forward, voice soft, to be seen. I felt something inside me shatter, years of discipline giving way to raw, helpless panic. I raised the flashlight, beam lancing through the ring. The figures didn't move, but their umbrellas clicked open in unison, snapping with a sound like a riot of twigs breaking. The canopies formed a dome overhead, shutting out my light. I stumbled back, heart pounding, but the circle closed in. Rainwater dripped through cracks above, pooling on the umbrellas until droplets fell through pinholes onto me, cold, relentless. Each droplet sounded like a heartbeat. Then, as suddenly as it began, the circle dissipated. The umbrellas collapsed, fallen spokes clattering. The figures melted into the dark, leaving behind a single, final Polaroid on the floor. A picture of the cavern I stood in, taken from above. At the bottom, in red ink, the words, "Your turn." My flashlight flickered and died. The cavern plunged into darkness, and the whispers erupted into a cacophony, drowning me in voices. I dropped to my knees, hands over my ears, every instinct screaming to run, to scream, to escape. But there was no way out. The trapdoor above had sealed itself. The only exit was through the ring of silent watchers, and they were closing in again. I don't know how long I stayed there, eyes open in the pitch, until the whispers faded to a single word echoing in my mind. Remember. Then silence. And I realized what happens to officers who vanish on rainy nights. They become part of the story. I will never be found. Some nights, I still wake to the tapping of umbrellas on asphalt, waiting for the wipers to scrape the final question across my window. Will anyone answer? I stumbled onto the pavement like a drowning man washed ashore, the world tilting beneath my boots as I tried to orient myself. Dawn was breaking, a thin gray light bleeding into the sky, and the rain had finally ceased, leaving the world glistening but empty. I could hear no sirens, no footsteps coming to my aid. Only the soft drip of water from the roadside mailbox, each drop echoing louder than any shout. I pressed my hand to my forehead, the cold metal of the dry umbrella I still gripped pressing into my palm. My uniform was shredded, mud-caked and torn, and every bone in my body ached as though I'd been run through a grinder. But when I looked up, there was no sign of the cruiser, no wreckage in the ditch, just the abandoned highway stretching east, the yellow line smudged by tire spray, the white fog line swallowed in morning mist. I called out, voice rough, "Officer Ramirez?" No answer, only the whisper of wind through the puddles. I tried my radio one last time, nothing but static. The handset felt useless in my hand, and I tossed it aside onto the wet pavement. I started walking, each step slow and deliberate, hoping someone, anyone, would find me. My mind reeled, trying to piece together what had happened. The barn, the cavern, the circle of watchers, the Polaroids, the whispered commands, the cold claustrophobia of that underground chamber. And most importantly, the truth of what they wanted. They wanted to be seen, they had said. And I had seen them, one by one, in pockets of darkness, in the flicker of candlelight, in the hollow echo of my own voice. I reached the crest of the rise by the old mill sign, the same curve where I'd braked for those sedans. In the pale light I saw them again, two identical dark sedans parked in the same spot, hazard lights blinking slowly, as if they'd been waiting for me all night. I froze. The pad of my heart felt suddenly too big for my chest. The puddle beneath each car rippled, but no rain fell. In each driver's side window leaned an umbrella handle, poking through the glass. Canopies pressed against the glass but completely dry. I approached the first car, mind churning. The driver's door was ajar, swinging on a broken hinge. I crouched and peered inside. The seat was empty, but the floor was lined with those small triangular footprints, deep, overlapping, fresh. They led across the passenger seat and vanished through the back door. I shone my flashlight, no beam, just feeble morning light. But it was enough to catch glimpses of muddy gloves hanging from the headrest, soaked coat draped across the back. In the other car, I found the Polaroid camera, its strap snapped, lying on the passenger floor. I picked it up, heart hammering. I thumbed the film door open, empty. I flipped it shut and heard a soft click from inside the glove box. I opened that too. A single Polaroid lay there, face up. My own face, eyes wide with terror, mask of exhaustion. The date, scrawled in red ink, overlapped the corner. Tomorrow. My skin crawled. Tomorrow. As if someone had profiled not just my fear, but my calendar, my schedule. They knew I'd be on night shift again, patrolling these curves, chasing ghosts until dawn. A sudden sound behind me made me whirl. On the far side of the road, between the two sedans, footsteps padded softly on the gravel. I aimed the camera's busted flash toward the sound. Nothing. The mist drifted. The only sign that someone had been there was a single set of footprints, leading east into the fog, deeper down the highway. I realized I still held the umbrella, the same pale green one from the farmhouse clearing, its handle slick and cold. I stepped back, but the world tilted. My legs gave way and I collapsed to my knees in the center line of the road. The emptiness around me pressed in, as though the fog itself were alive, breathing me in, waiting. I raised the umbrella above my head like a banner, like a shield. The underside was stamped with the county seal of a place that didn't exist. A mirror image of the badge I'd found in the clearing. I thought of the cavern's walls, etched with triangles and circles, the runes I couldn't decipher. I thought of the whispered word, remember. Remember what? Who? And why me? I shut my eyes, trying to recall anything normal. My wife's face before she left, the sound of my partner's laugh, the safe warmth of the precinct break room. But each memory was contaminated now, tinged with fear and mud, and the stale dread of that underground altar. A distant rumble made me lift my head. The black outline of a semi-truck appeared, headlights piercing the gray. It barreled toward me, too fast to veer. I stood, or tried to. The rumble grew louder, the vibrations shuddered through the pavement. In its radiator grill I thought I saw shapes. Umbrellas instead of headlights, pink and yellow and black, arranged in a haunting pattern. Two circles intersecting a triangle. I closed my eyes, the roar threatened to drown out thought. Then the reflection in the windshield. Behind the truck, carved in the wet asphalt, was the spiral of nails from the altar, pressed into the road by 100 greasy tires. In that heartbeat, I knew there was nowhere to run. No station, no safety, no dawn that could reach me. They weren't bound by time or place. They moved through shadows and rain-soaked fields waiting for me to arrive, waiting for me to see them. The truck's horn blared, and I opened my eyes. The grill was empty. No driver, no cab, just a perfect chrome reflection showing me standing in the center line, umbrella raised. I blinked. The truck had passed, leaving only the echo of its horn, the impression of fresh tire marks, and the umbrella imprint scorched into the wet asphalt. I sank to the ground, rain starting again, fat drops splattering on the umbrella's canopy. The forked beams of my cruiser's last lights winked out in the distance. And then I heard the whisper, closer now, a breath against my ear. Remember me. I pressed my forehead to the umbrella's fabric, tears mixing with rain. I don't know if I'll wake tomorrow, or if tomorrow even exists. But I know one thing, they will always be here, waiting in the moments between raindrops, in the silence after the storms, in the headlights that never reach me. I slipped the cruiser into gear without turning the engine over. The rain has eased into a steady patter, almost polite, but I can't shake the rhythm of those wipers scraping across the windshield like fingernails on glass. It's 2:47 a.m. and my eyes are burning, but I can't stop watching the highway ahead. 5 miles back, I found her bike in a puddle, and that image is seared into my mind, the wheel spinning, as if someone unseen was still turning it. No backpack, no shoes, no farewell. Just that spinning wheel and too much wet. I drive slowly, cautious enough to leave tracks in the mud, even though I've been told footprints vanish in this weather. Every so often, I jab at the mic. "Dispatch, this is Unit 42, checking in. No sign yet, over." Static crackles. "Copy, 42, keep me posted." And then, nothing but the rain. I pull off onto that old county road, the one that runs past the collapsed bridge. The boards were rotted through last inspection, but nobody ever had the guts to tear it down. It stands there in the downpour, sagging like a drunk, nails jutting from the planks. I step out into the mud, boots sinking, pants soaked past the cuffs. My flashlight spray paints the world in narrow beams, and the rain turns every beam into 1,000 tiny mirrors. I crouch at the edge of the creek, feeling for the carving I saw weeks ago. "Help me," chiseled into the beam. It's gone, washed smooth by a week of storms. In its place is nothing but slick wood, dark with water and age. I taste disappointment. As I straighten, a single droplet rolls down my face, but it isn't rain. My heart's hammering so hard I'm surprised it hasn't shattered my ribs. I go back to the cruiser and light a cigarette, even though I promised the department I'd quit. I hold it between thumb and forefinger, under the light of a street lamp that's sputtering at the road's entrance. The smoke and mist curl together, and for a moment I don't know if it's my breath or the storm. I think about my daughter, 16, because everything comes back to her now. The last voicemail sits in my pocket, her voice so close I could swear she was handing me the phone. "Dad, please." The radio buzzes me out of my reverie. 42. We've got another stalled car, Station 6, near the junction. It's that voice again, calm, professional. Copy that. I slip back inside and kill the cigarette under my heel. 9 minutes later, I find the sedan head-on in the weeds, engine running, lights full blast. No one inside. Muddy footprints lead from the passenger door into the woods. My boots tear at the soil as I follow, flashlight swinging. Leaves shiver under rain, branches scraping overhead, and I realize I'm holding my breath. Then I see it. An umbrella, collapsed, lying on a bed of pine needles, but I'm soaked through from the storm. I kneel and lift it, bone dry. No stains, no owner. Just dry fabric in a swamp. I stuff it into the cruiser. I drive 20 miles back to headquarters, not sure why. There's no protocol for an empty car and a dry umbrella. The night sergeant raises an eyebrow. "Found you a sponsor for quitting smoking?" he asks, barely masking a yawn. I only shrug. I drop the umbrella on the evidence locker. "Item 57, I mutter. I run the plates on the stalled car, never registered. ID on the seat is shredded. Binder of IDs in my pocket, each with a face that wasn't his, burns against my thigh. I've checked and double-checked. No matches in the system, no known aliases. The man could be anyone. The clock hits 4:03 a.m., and I'm back on the road. I pass the gas station on Highway 6. Its neon sign flickers. Open, even though the clerk's on break and locked the door. Inside, a single umbrella stands under the fluorescent glow. It's the same one. I press my palm to the glass. The chill seeps into my bones. I walk around to the dumpster and find nothing but soggy coffee cups. Then I see a scrap of paper jammed between the doorframe. Can't stay dry. No signature, no punctuation. Just those words stamped in faded black ink. That line echoes in my head as I drive home. Miles to go until I see my own front door. My neighbor's porch light paints a yellow smear across the driveway. I kill the engine in my own garage and don't move for a long minute, listening to the wipers on my windshield as if they'll tell me what to do next. Inside the house, everything is too warm. The heating's on, windows shut because back home, rain doesn't mean threat. It means safety. My daughter's room at the end of the hall is dark. I pause outside her door. No sound, no hum of phone on charge, no soft shuffle of someone tossing in their sleep. I knock. "Tess?" My own voice ricochets back. I push the door open. The room's empty, mattress bare, sheets on the floor. On the pillow lies her phone, screen cracked, wallpaper showing our last fishing trip, her beaming, me holding the trout. There's a new voicemail notification. I cram my hand into my pocket, pulling the phone free, fingers trembling. I tap to play, rain on a windshield, wipers scraping. Then her voice, "Dad, come find me." And it's not pleading anymore, it's a statement. The line goes dead. I don't know if I'm running toward rescue or straight into the storm he's been crafting. But I grab my jacket, keys, and ID binder. I'll drive back to that bridge. I'll call her name into the night. I'll answer every question I ever ignored, because the rain is coming again. And this time, I can't let it wash away what I almost missed. The wet leather of my boots squelches as I step back into the downpour, the night stretching before me like a long sentence I can't end. The rain is coming down harder now, each droplet a drumbeat against the cruiser's roof, insistent, unrelenting. I jam the key into the ignition, praying the engine turns over on the first try. It coughs, then roars to life, headlights cutting clean slashes through the darkness. The dashboard clock blinks 4:10 a.m., but time here feels suspended, as if the storm has swallowed every second and left only the splashes of water and the hum of the transmission. I pull from the garage, leaving the dry umbrella on the passenger seat propped against the door like a silent witness. I run my fingers across the ridges of the handle. Cold, smooth, untouched by rain, despite every wet street I've crossed tonight. There's no logic to it, and I'm sick of logic. Protocol says I should call tonight's extra assignments done, file a report on the missing daughter, maybe go through the motions of concern before heading home. But home feels irrelevant now, like a promise I made long ago and forgot the terms. The road out of town is slick with runoff, and I grip the wheel tight enough to whiten my knuckles. The highway guardrails flash by in intermittent glimmers, reflections of my headlights echoing off the metal. Each mile marker ticks past, 24, 25, 26. The corridor between past and future narrows with every turn, and I realize I'm driving not toward an answer, but deeper into the question. I find myself back at the collapsed bridge just before 4:30. The creek below roars white and foamy, pushing against the broken beams like a beast sniffing at a trap. Moonlight, filtered through scudding clouds, brushes the water's surface. I kill the engine and step out again, the cold assaulting my lungs. I don't know how many times I've returned to this spot in the last few weeks. I don't know if I believe the carvings hold truth or if I'm chasing ghosts born in my own mind. The dry umbrella is still there, leaning against the guardrail. I step closer, heart thumping so loud it masks the roar of the creek. The fabric is pale against the dark wood, ribs splayed like skeletal fingers. I run my hand along the shaft. It's humming with anticipation, as if it knows I'm here to find something. I could toss it back into the trunk, leave it with the others, but I need it. Some piece of the puzzle I haven't named. I lean back and stare up at the sky. Rain lashes my face, but above the bridge's wooden skeleton, the clouds part just enough to let a star, lonely and distant, bleed its light. I remember nights on patrol when I'd stare at that same star, wondering why duty had chosen me. I noticed the first inkling of a tremor in my hands. I drop my gaze to the ground, to the mud where footprints should be. But there's nothing, No boot prints, no stray impressions. Just earth soaked clean. A howl drifts in from the woods, a coyote or something larger, and I startle, cock my head, listening. The hush that follows is more alarming than the cry itself. It's as if the forest holds its breath. I check my watch, 4:33. The number feels ominous, as if time itself is taunting me. I exhale, fog billowing from my lips, and I realize that all the questions swirl together. Why the IDs? Why the carving? Why the dry umbrella? Why my daughter? And why do I keep returning here when every instinct screams at me to drive away, put this night behind me? Darkness churns around me. I click on my flashlight, and the beam quivers across moss-covered planks. I shine it at each broken board, no carving, no message, only waterlogged wood groaning under its own weight. Every night it should be different, I think, but it's always the same. Empty, and yet I know the message isn't on the wood. It's somewhere else, embedded in each echoing raindrop, in every shadow through the wipers. I turn, heading back to the cruiser, and nearly stumble over something half buried in mud. My flashlight catches a glint, metal. I kneel, fish it out. A badge, a police badge, battered and still gleaming under the beam's stark glare. It's not mine. The number is off by 1 digit. The nameplate is scratched. Harper, smudged past recognition. My pulse leaps. Harper. Officer Harper's daughter. Missing. Last sighted on County Road 17. She must have lost it in her search for help. Or in someone else's game. I hold the badge against my chest, close enough to hear the drums of my heart shift temp. Oh, I know now that the man with the IDs knew which buttons to press. He knew how to push me back here. He knew the path I'd take, the questions I'd ask, and he left breadcrumbs only I could follow. I stand, the mud sucking at my boots. There's a hollow ache in my gut, a realization that I'm not investigating a random series of events. I'm entangled in something personal, something calculated. I slip the badge into my pocket beside the binder of IDs. Everything that man touched, he left behind. Each artifact is a word in his confession. Each dry umbrella, each carving, each abandoned car, and this badge, they're all part of a sentence he's writing in the rain. I get back in and start the engine. The cruiser hums. The rain has picked up again, drumming without mercy. I pull away, heading east this time, toward the heart of the woods. The GPS flickers, signal fading, but I know the road. An old service road that leads to an abandoned farmhouse my rookie partner once joked about. They said nobody lived there, windows broken, walls sagging. A place people avoid, even in daylight. Perfect for someone who wants to be forgotten. I drive through knee-deep puddles, the tires hissing. Every mile I think I'll find another clue. A footprint, a scrap of clothing. But the road offers only more rain and more darkness. My headlights reveal a narrow clearing ahead, a rusted mailbox, cracked open, next to a filter of broken fence posts. I stop the car, kill the engine again. The silence is absolute, oppressive. My stomach dips. This place is too quiet, like the calm before something breaks. I open the door, pull out my flashlight. The beam slashes through the rain, landing on the farmhouse's silhouette. Roof collapsed in the center, walls bowed outward. A single window glows with a flicker of light. Candle? Flashlight? I can't tell. I check my gun. It's loaded, safety off. I step forward, boots crunching on gravel. Rain spatters on the brim of my hat, and I remember how he said he'd find me. My heart hammers, but I move with purpose. Each step is a vow, to find her, to answer the questions, to confront the man orchestrating this nightmare. I reach the door frame, no lock, just a ragged gap, and shine my light inside. wooden floorboards slick with rainwater, door to the cellar hanging open, revealing a black mouth in the floor. I shine the light down, heart in my throat. There, scrawled on the step, "You came." Beneath it, another line. "Now, look." I swallow, since breathing feels too loud in this accursed quiet. I step down, the board creaking beneath me. The flashlight beam scans the walls, handprints in mud, footprints in dust, each telling the story of someone else's passage. I follow them deeper, heart pounding so that every footstep echoes through my bones. Then I see her, my daughter's pale face in a shattered mirror on the far wall. She's kneeling, hands folded, staring at me with eyes too old for 16. Behind her, the wall is covered in all the missing persons flyers I handed out in the past weeks, her face among them, each flyer pinned by the same odd loop of string. He's collected them, arranged them, turned them into his gallery. She doesn't move, doesn't speak, just stares. My mouth goes dry. I realize this isn't an accident. He knew I'd come here. He knew I'd follow every breadcrumb. He wanted me to see this gallery, to feel the horror of his tapestry. I step forward, and the mirror cracks, spidering outward, as if struck from within. She's gone, just shards of glass and a single slipper left behind, soaked and torn. I drop to my knees, heart in my throat, the bundle of flyers fluttering to the floor like fragmented birds. Above me, footsteps, or so I think. In the darkness beyond the beam's edge, I hear a familiar rhythm. Wipers scraping, the scrape of something moving in the storm. I look up, and the flashlight flickers. Rain pours through the broken roof, and I realize he's here, watching, and I can hear him breathing in the wet air, just beyond the light. I raise my gun, voice a whisper choking in my throat. "Who are you?" No answer. Only the scrape. Closer, coming to fill the shadows as I stand, rain washing the blood from my palms. The unanswered questions piling like floodwaters around me. I step toward the dark, into the pause between thunder and silence, and the world tilts as I reach for what I can't yet see. The storm pressing in on every side, daring me to follow. I don't know what I'll find, but I have to keep going, because this night is mine now and I can't stop until the truth steps out of the rain and speaks my name. I don't bother closing the cellar door behind me. It swings on its broken hinge with a slow groan, barely audible over the rain pounding through the gaping roof. The beam from my flashlight quivers on the damp stone steps, illuminating slick moss and pooled water that smells of rot. I hesitated at the top, heart hammering so loud I thought the walls might shake, but my daughter's face haunts every memory, propelling me down each splintered board. The chamber is split in two by a low stone partition. To my left, the floor slopes toward a shallow trench carved into the rock, an old drainage channel, probably meant to divert water, but now useless. To my right, a narrow passage leads off into deeper blackness, too tight for comfort. I force myself toward the partition, flashlight fixed on the trench. That's where I see footprints pressed into the wet earth, small, barefoot impressions, like those of a child. Each step is careful, deliberate, toe first, as if she knew the floor might give way. My throat constricts and I swallow. I reach into my coat and pull out my phone, flicking the light on its screen off and on, not wanting any call to disrupt this fragile silence. Then I stand over the footprints. They stop halfway across the trench, then resume on the far side, arcing toward the passage. She moved deliberately, even here. Whoever brought her knew exactly how to guide her, coax her further into the cold. The flashlight beam catches something near the footprints. A scrap of cloth, dark green, her favorite hoodie. the one she wore when she left for cross-country that morning. I kneel and pick it up, shrugging off the weight of tears. It's tangled with clay and congealed water. I fold it carefully against my chest, mind racing through every moment I didn't see, every sign I ignored. I'd been too ready to chalk this up to a kid running off until he orchestrated every detail so perfectly I couldn't look away. A fresh rumble of thunder vibrates through the cellar, and the wooden supports overhead groan in response. I shiver, socks soaked, lungs tight. I glance toward the narrowing passage. That's where the candlelight flickered in the distance, just a faint glow beyond sight when I first entered. Now it's gone, swallowed by the rain and darkness. I'm about to step forward when the beam picks up something on the wall. Words carved roughly into stone, gouged deep enough to remain visible despite the moisture. I lean in, brushing away moss with a trembling fingertip. Your turn. No signature, no flourish. Only those two words, desperate and accusatory. Your turn, as though this is a game he's played countless times, each prey invited to step into his trap. I force down bile and push myself upright. I have to follow the passage. I step through the narrow opening, the walls closing in, slick and cold. My flashlight skitters across rough bricks, and it feels painfully intimate, like I'm crawling into a wound. The air grows stale, each breath tasting of mildew and dust. At the end of the passage, I emerge into another chamber, larger, with a low, arched ceiling spotted by mold. Here, the floor is strewn with debris, broken planks, shards of glass, and dozens of empty picture frames lying upside down in the mud, their glass shattered. I pick one up, heart lurching. Inside the frame is a Polaroid, a bloodless hand pressed flat against a bathroom mirror, the wet imprint leaving a ghostly outline. No face, no context, just the hand, splayed fingers leaving little rivulets of water trailing down the glass. I lower the frame, stomach dropping. I can't tell if it's her hand or someone else's. My mind recoils at the thought that each frame could hold another fragment of terror he's assembled, another testimony to his control. I slide the Polaroid into my pocket, careful not to smear the image. My flashlight dances across the chamber, and suddenly I notice the far wall is covered in scrawled messages, sprayed or scratched across every inch. Did you look? Whose turn is it? I know your fear. The scrawls overlap in chaotic layers, ghostly white against the damp stone, each word echoing in my chest like a cursed mantra. A drip of water splatters on my head. I look up. The ceiling is semi-collapsed here, jagged beams blocking what little moonlight filters through. Rain falls in thin streams, pooling at my boots. I inch toward the wall, reading each phrase, forcing my mind to soak in the terror he's built. Then, at eye level, I spot something new, written in a hurried scrawl that seems almost fresh. She's buried here. I freeze, world frozen in that moment. She's buried here. My daughter, 6 feet under this filthy floor, and I've been wandering in circles chasing a phantom. I swallow hard, nausea and rage warring in my gut. I call out, my voice cracks in the echoing space. Tess! But only dripping water answers, and it sounds like mocking laughter in my ears. A sudden shift in the air behind me makes me spin, light trembling on a corner of the chamber. Where two walls meet, there's a narrow crack. Too tight for footprints, but big enough that something could hide inside. My hair prickles. My pulse spikes. I realize that the air here is colder, moving in and out of that dark crevice. Breathing. I raise my gun, hand steady for the first time this night. Come out, now! My voice booms, ricocheting off every surface, driving the rain's patter into silence. I see the doorway silhouette shift. Something backs away, foot scraping on mud. Then the crack widens slightly as a shoe. An adult's boot, not hers, slides into view. Its mud-caked, heavy tread, like the ones firefighters wear. That detail should mean something to me, but my mind's spinning. I take a cautious step forward. The beam catches a wrapped bundle at the edge of the crevice. Rope, and the hint of fabric pressed underneath. It doesn't look like a body, but something heavy enough to leave an imprint in the mud next to it. I edge closer, the smell sharp in the stale air, earth mixed with bleach. Somebody cleaned here once, tried to sanitize, tried and failed. Then the flashlight skitters off the bundle onto the corner of the chamber behind me. And I see it. A single lamp, oil lamp, small, guttering, but lit. Its glow pools in soft orange on a section of floor that's been scrubbed clean of mud. No footprints, no blood, nothing but a small circle of clean stone in a room of filth. I swallow, bone-deep tremor. He's preparing a stage. Whatever's inside that bundle, whatever he wants me to find, this is his altar. I lift my flashlight back to the bundle. The rope is coiled tight, cinching fabric around the shape. My pulse races, an animal's heart, pounding for escape and for attack. I move in, slick stones underfoot, making every step a gamble. The beam catches the knot. I jab at it, hands trembling. The rope gives and I yank it free. The fabric tears. There, wet hair clumped against a scalp, face buried in the dirt. I twist the head gently. Tessa's pale features, eyes closed, lashes caked with mud. A labored gasp tears from my throat. She shudders, lid fluttering. I clutch her, rocking as she coughs, fluid spraying from her mouth. Tess! Tess! I cup her jaw, forcing her eyes open. They're gone. Gone from fear to blank recognition. She blinks, dazed. I scoop her into my arms. Her hoodie is torn, but she clings. Dad? She whispers, voice ragged. I press a kiss to her temple, tears mingling with rain on her face. I'm here, baby, I'm here. I cradle her, turning toward that tight crack, thinking I'll face him, face the monster who almost killed her. But as I move, the crack closes, slams shut with a grind of stone against stone. It's gone. The passage sealed, the killer vanished like a shadow. I stumble back, heart in my throat as Tess clings to me, shivering. I feel the wall behind where the passage was, cold, unbroken, no seam. Nothing to suggest an opening. It's as if it never existed. I look down at the clean circle lit by oil lamp, now extinguished, wick snapped. I take Tessa's hand, start toward the steps. Each rung is an ache in my legs, but I haul us up. The cellar tilts, the ceiling sags, rain pours through the broken roof. I burst into the main chamber, cradling her like a lifeline. At the top of the steps, my gun slides from my belt into the mud with a dull thud. I barely feel it. I just run, dragging Tess behind me, through the arched chamber past the picture frames across the trench. She weakly grips my jacket, tears leaking from her eyes, not fear, but relief. We emerge into the passage, then the open cellar. I heave us into the rain, the cold water biting at my shoulders. Lightning forks overhead, illuminating the shattered walls. I drop to my knees in the mud, shielding Tess under my coat. She clings to me, body trembling. I wrap my arms around her, not caring about mud or blood. The storm rages, wind hollow as it whips around us. I call dispatch, voice cracking. This is Unit 42. I found her. I've found my daughter. I scoot backward, dragging Tess until we're at the base of the stairs. She whispers, voice fragile. He said, would you come find me? I nod, tears masked by the rain. Over the howl of wind, I almost hear his voice. A soft scrape, like wipers on a windshield, calling my name. I glanced toward the wood beams of the porch where the umbrella leaned. It's missing. The dry umbrella is gone. He's taken his token. He's moved on, leaving us alive but exposed. I tighten my grip on Tess, pull her to her feet. The highway awaits above us, and beyond that, a world that'll never be the same. I whisper into her hair, "I'll never leave you again." She nods, eyes shut against the storm. And as we climb the muddy steps together, I realize the night isn't over. Not until I know who he is, until every torn scrap, every dry umbrella, every carving in wood and stone spells out his name. The rain pounds, relentless, as we surge into the darkness. Two silhouettes edging toward rescue and toward the reckoning I've summoned in the relentless storm. I don't remember climbing into the cruiser, only remembering Tess's small body curled against mine in the passenger seat. Her breaths come shallow, punctuated by quiet sobs that dissolve into the roar of rain. I slam the door shut behind me, and the lock echoes like a judge's gavel. I slip the key into the ignition. The engine fires, coughing through the storm. I flip on the wipers. They shriek against the windshield, but nothing cuts through the night like Tess's whisper. Will he come back? I glance at her in the passenger window. Her eyes are closed now, lashes wet, cheeks smudged with mud and tears. She's wearing my daughter's hoodie, torn, clinging to her small frame like a lifeline. I brush her hair back, careful of her cuts, and I see the bruises along her arms where rope bit into her skin. My hands shake as I start the car, and she lifts her head to look at me, eyelids still heavy with fear. He won't, I promise, though I'm not certain. You're safe. The windshield wipers slam rhythmically, and I realize I'm repeating the same line in my head over and over. Safe, safe, safe. Like a mantra to keep the memory of what happened from taking root. The county road looms ahead, water pooling under shadowed trees. I drive without headlights on, letting the cruiser's taillights guide me back to the junction where backup should be waiting. Dispatch is on the line. Unit 42, status update? Their voices sound distant, tinny. Subject and victim located, I say, voice hollow. We're exiting the woods, northbound, ETA 5. They click acknowledgement and fall silent, except for static. I check the rearview mirror. Rain streaks across the glass, distorting Tess's face until she looks like half child, half woman, older, haunted. I slam my hand on the steering wheel to stop my pulse from leaking into my voice. Just hold on, baby, I murmur. Hold on for me. We reach the intersection. Patrol cars flash blue and red lights through the rain. Officers rush forward, umbrellas bobbing, voices sharp. I lift Tess into the arms of a paramedic, who wraps her in a blanket and carries her toward the medical unit. Tess hides her face against the paramedic's jacket. I follow, leaving the doors of the cruiser open so the rain can wash through, rinsing away the night. Back in the driver's seat, I watch Tess disappear into the mobile clinic. The medic catches my eye, nods grimly. I close my eyes, taste blood and rain on my tongue. The smell of gasoline mixes with damp earth at the edge of the woods. I don't know how long I sit there, only that my heart feels like lead in my chest. A hand on my shoulder jerks me upright. "Harper," the captain says, rain dripping from his brim. "You okay?" I wipe my face, find nothing but rainwater. I will be. He looks at the cruiser, at the evidence tag on the door, item 57, the umbrella. He glances down at the wet floorboard. "We secured the site," he says. "No sign of secondary subjects, but you—" He pauses. "You okay to drive?" I swallow. I need to finish the report. He fishes a folder from his jacket, tosses it onto the passenger seat. "We'll handle paperwork, go home, get dry." I shake my head. He's still out there. His brow tightens. We'll deploy a task force. You need rest, Harper. I look at Tess's hoodie draped over the seat, splattered with mud. This isn't over. He glances at the woods, then back at me. We'll find him. Now go. I kill the engine. The cruiser falls silent, rain the only sound. I stay still, staring at the empty road. The captain turns and walks away, boots slipping on the mud. Behind me, headlights fade. I open the door and step into the rain. Each drop is an accusation. I walk to the edge of the woods, the place where we found her, where I walked deeper than any protocol allowed. I kneel and press my palm into the mud. The prints are gone. It's as if no one ever walked there, but I remember every step, the soft prints of my daughter, the heavier tread of boot. I close my eyes. I could swear I feel something under my fingers, an impression, a shape. I dig with my free hand, splintering bark and wet soil. My fingernails scrape on something cold and metallic. I pull out a small tin box, the kind you'd keep mints in. It's covered in mud, but I wipe it clean on my pant leg. Inside are scraps of paper, tiny torn squares, folded thousands of times. I unfold one. In handwriting so small it's almost invisible, 3 words, "Don't forget him." My chest seizes. Whom? Me? My daughter? Or the man who orchestrated this nightmare? I flip through more scraps, each one a fragment of a message, unreadable in isolation. A jigsaw puzzle I can't finish. I drop the tin into my jacket pocket and stand, rain running down my face like tears I can't hide. I know where to go next. I have leads now, the farmhouse, the IDs, the badge, this tin. Each clue is a nerve I can pull, a thread I can follow further into the dark. Tess is safe for now, but he's not done. He's collecting us like trophies, gathering our fear and shaping it into a story only he can finish. I turn back to the cruiser. The captain is standing by the door, hands in pockets, watching me. I reach in and lift the evidence folder from the passenger seat. Inside are photos of the candles, the frames, the carvings, the Polaroids. Each image is a page in his diary. I flip to the last page. An empty photo frame labeled Future Victim, wedged between 2 Polaroids of unknown faces. Beneath it, a date. Tomorrow. I close the folder, heart pounding. The captain's eyes flick between the folder and my face. He nods but says nothing. We stand together in the rain, 2 officers battered by the storm, staring down the barrel of someone who sees our line between duty and personal as nothing more than an invitation. I get back in the cruiser, slide the folder onto the seat beside me, and close the door. The lock clicks. I reach into my pocket and finger the tin. I contemplate opening it, reading the rest of those scraps, letting him speak through these clay tablets of terror. But I don't. Some secrets you want to keep hidden even from yourself. I start the engine. The wipers slap the windshield. I pull away, heading for the precinct. Tomorrow, I'll wake Tess, tell her it's going to be okay. Tomorrow, we'll try to remember what life looks like without fear. And tomorrow, I'll come back to this note, this tin, this promise of another name. The road unfolds before me, slick and unending. And I know, when the rain falls again, it will not wash away the night. It will only remind us that the storm is never truly over. What do you do when the storm knows your name? The precinct is empty when I get back. Hallways lit by that flicker of fluorescent bulbs that never seem to burn at full strength. Tess is draped over her bed in the holding cell. Blanket up to her chin, eyes closed but restless, murmuring fragments of her fear in her sleep. I pause at the bars, watching her chest rise and fall unevenly, as though she's breathing rain instead of air. I slip the evidence folder onto an empty desk, open it to the last page, and run my finger over future victim, with tomorrow's date scrawled beneath. My hand trembles. I step into the bullpen, where desks huddle like islands in a sea of linoleum. I slide into my chair, rub my face, then flip open the tin. The scraps are folded so many times their creases form a web. I unfold each one carefully, laying them in a grid across the desk, like cards in a tarot spread. Most are illegible, ink blurred by water or too small to read, but a few show words or fragments. You hear her? The next drop? Between wiper beats. Know my name now. My pulse thunders. He's speaking through paper fragments, making the rain his instrument, spelling out his intent in the spaces between storms. I spread the fragments so I can stare at them, willing them to form a message, but they refuse. They stay broken. I glance at Tessa's cell. She's quiet now. I close the tin, slip it into my coat pocket, and stand. The files on my desk go unfiled. Carla Benson's missing persons report, the logs for every stalled car, the inventory of every dry umbrella recovered. A mountain of half-finished cases. But tonight I only have one priority: finding him before he writes tomorrow's date. I slip past the sergeant at the door, nodding tight-lipped, and head down the corridor toward the records room. I need the original badge records for Harper, the badge I found in the mud at the bridge. Who else could have lost it? Who else's number is that one digit off from mine? The records room is cramped, the catalog cabinets crowding every foot of wall. I pull open drawer 17, then 18, flipping through laminated sheets until I land on Harper, Unit 41, and Harper, Unit 42. The badge I found bears Unit 41. That guy doesn't exist. Unit 42 is me. Unit 41 was my brother, Jason Harper, killed 5 years ago in a shootout that was ruled justified. He was the rookie, pinned down by 2 men with shotguns. I found his body. One bullet had torn a path through his uniform badge. I rest my palm on the drawer. My breath catches. He's taken Jason's badge from the memorial case at the family's request. I had pried it off months ago, brought it home, wrapped it in a box of old patrol photos. It vanished the night Tess went missing. He used it to mock me, to remind me that I'm chasing ghosts of the past and the present. I close the drawer. I leave the records room without logging entries. There's no time for bureaucracy. I step into the night again, rain slapping pavement under my boots. I drive back to my house, not to home, but to a clearing in the woods behind it where my father buried Jason's ashes. It's a spot I visit when I can't sleep, when the ghosts crowd too close. The path is overgrown, summer grass gone wild. I hack at it with my flashlight, make my way to the flat stone I placed atop the urn. I kneel, fingers trailing across the engraved name. Jason L. Harper, 1983 to 2019. I slide the urn from its niche. The lid rattles when I shift it. No damp inside, no sign that someone pried it open. The ashes are undisturbed. He didn't get this far, not here. I weigh the urn in my hands. It's heavy. He left Jason's badge but didn't touch the ashes. He wants me to see the badge, feel my brother's absence, but not this. Not this bone memory. I breathe mist into the night and I feel my heart tear open at the thought of what he could do next. A distant rumble rolls across the sky. I set the urn back, hands slick with rain and grief. I stand, coat clinging to me like a second skin. I head back to the cruiser, footfalls hollow in the underbrush. I drive toward the riverfront, where I used to patrol before I transferred here. An old boathouse stands empty now, a squat building by the water, roof half sunk into the bank, windows boarded but warped. Perfect for someone who wants to stay in the shadow of water, to use the river's dark pulse as a shield. I park under a street lamp that flickers in protest. Wipers off. Rain is heavy enough without them. I click on my flashlight and move to the boathouse door. I jiggled it months ago when the first dry umbrella emerged upstream. No answer. Tonight I shove harder. The door swings inward with a sigh of rot. Inside is wet wood, the stench of algae, and footprints on the floorboards. Size 12, the same heavy tread I saw in the cellar, but now mixed with smaller prints that could be Tess's or someone else's small foot. I follow them to the far corner where water seeps up between planks. My heart sinks as I kneel. The small prints circle a section of floor that's been pried up, boards stacked to one side. Beneath is a shallow pit, mud and water swirling at the bottom. I shine my light across its walls. A series of photographs stick to the hard-packed earth, pinned with nails like trophies. I pick one up with gloved hands. It's me, arms folded, standing at the smashed window of the farmhouse. The next photo is Tess running for cover behind the cruiser. Her face is blurred, but the expression is clear, terror without escape. I swallow and load my gun, stepping carefully around the pit. Then I see it, the last photograph nailed to a plank supporting the boathouse beam. The photo is of Jason, standing in uniform behind me, our last patrol together. His grin is bright, hopeful. I tape my flashlight to my helmet so both hands are free. I press the beam on the photo. The wood around it has been carved, tiny letters gouged into the plank around his picture. Your turn to fear me. My breath hitches. The photos fall like wet leaves, tumbling into the pit. I step back, chest tight. He's been here, he's here now, leaving these messages as signposts in my life's worst places. My daughter's cell, my brother's grave, the farmhouse, the boathouse. A twisted breadcrumb trail that maps heartbreak and forces me to follow. I lift my gun and sweep the building. The darkness recoils, but I know he's here, even if just beyond my light. I call his name, voice a rasp. I know you're here. But the rain answers, and the water trickles through the pit in a mocking susurration. I back out into the night, each step deliberate, boots sinking in mud. I pause under the lamp. I check my phone, 3:33 a.m., a number he loves, mirrored and reborn. I tuck the tin in my coat, tape the final photo into the folder labeled Exhibit Z'd, and head back to the cruiser. I climb in and lock the door. I sit for a long moment, chest heaving. I think of Tess asleep in the cell, safe for now. I think of Jason, ashes undisturbed. And I think of him, our tormentor, the architect of this ordeal, somewhere in the storm, writing today's date in umbrellas, carvings, scraps of paper, photographs, waiting for me to come find him again. I put the car into drive. The wipers scream, clearing away the dark. I pull onto the road and head toward home, toward the cell, toward the rest of my life that he's already rewritten in his image. The night stretches in front of me, a ledger that demands another entry. I raise my hand away from the steering wheel, wrist turning so I can see the tin's lid pressed in my jacket pocket. Tomorrow's date is still blank. He's given me another day, but am I ready to fill in the last line of his story? I remember pulling away from the precinct at 11:07 p.m. when the rain started. First, a gentle hiss, then a relentless drumming that felt like God's own heartbeat against the roof. I flicked on the dome light just long enough to check my notes. A missing teenager last seen near the old Cotton Gin on West Elm, the same place I'd responded to a busted pipe 2 years ago. The radio crackled as I eased onto Highway 47, tires whispering on wet asphalt. My coffee sat lukewarm in the cup holder, steam rising in a ghostly swirl I barely noticed. I was chasing ghosts already. By 11:21, I was 5 miles out of town. The street lamps thinned to nothing, leaving only the headlight's cone fighting back the darkness. Rain clung to every surface, turning fields into mirrors and power lines into trembling wires overhead. I slowed to 20 miles per hour, scanning the shoulders. A lone barn flickered in my mirror, neon peeling off the sign that read Johnson's Feed and Seed. It blinked off and on like the blink of a dying eye. My mind snapped back to the boy's mother. She said he was gone since sundown, texting that he'd sneak out to see his girlfriend. No mention of rain, no mention of this darkness swallowing the back road. At 11:27, the radio blared. Unit 3. Be advised of a reported break-in at the Blue Moon Diner on Main Street. My heart kicked. 2 calls at once, and I was 20 minutes from the diner. I punched the mic. Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I'm currently en route to the Cotton Gin, ETA 5. No answer. The diner call slid through without acknowledgement. I hesitated. If someone broke into a diner in town, why didn't dispatch redirect me? I should have turned around, but something in my gut told me the missing kid was more urgent, and rain nights have that smell of tragedy in the wind. I passed the sign for Antlers Grove Cemetery, headlights sweeping over mossy stones, and a wrought iron gate hanging crooked. The gate glimmered wet, and a single crow flapped away, impossibly silent. I hit the brakes. There, in the graveyard's far corner, a flashlight beam bobbed like a firefly. I killed the engine. Silence fell so complete it rang in my ears. Sweat formed under my collar despite the chill. I didn't know what I expected. Kids playing dare you games, maybe. But when I stepped out, the beam died. No one's out here, I muttered. Rain spattered my face, cold as pinpricks. I checked the beam on my own flashlight. Dead batteries. My backup light was in the trunk. I trudged back, hands in pockets, rain slicking the ground. When I reached the cruiser, something caught my eye. Footprints in the muddy grass leading away from the beam's last position, then stopping at the first row of headstones. The prints were small, like a teenager's winter boots, but they ended abruptly, no return path. I shone my flashlight down the row. Nothing but moss and stone. In the passenger seat, I spotted a red baseball cap, soaked through, brim torn. I picked it up and saw initials embroidered inside, J.A.R. The kid's name was Jared Allen Roberts. My breath went shallow. I called dispatch again, voice tight. Requesting backup at cemetery, possible sighting of missing juvenile. Static. Then my phone buzzed. Text, unknown number. He's not here. I dropped the cap back onto the seat, rain dripping from the brim onto my boot. Who's not here? I texted. No reply. I felt the weight of the night pressing against my lungs. I decided to head for the gin. Maybe I'd find him near the rusting equipment, hiding from the storm. I slid back into the driver's seat and pulled away, tire tracks washing over the ground I'd just scoured. The radio crackled again. Officer down, westbound Highway 47. My knuckles whitened on the wheel as the transmission cut out. I slammed the gas pedal, hands shaking so badly I could taste adrenaline in my mouth. A mile later, I saw the cruiser at the Cotton Gin entrance, lights still on but engine silent. I killed my own lights and coasted in. Rain turned the yard into a slick reflection of rusted silos. The broken chain-link fence sagged, torn where someone had slipped through. I grabbed my flashlight and got out, heart thudding. The radio sat on the passenger floor, speaker askew. Inside, the kid's red cap lay on the seat. I crouched and pressed the button. Static, Then a panicked gasp. Jared's voice. "Help, please." It cut off. I kicked the door open. Water pooled on the floorboard. The back seat was empty. I yanked the door behind me. The rain and the clamor returned. I called out, "Jared? You there?" No answer. My flashlight beam crossed the courtyard to the old machinery shed. The door was ajar, paint peeling. I approached, wipers staccato overhead. The damp smell of oil and mold mixed with something metallic. Fear, maybe. I pushed the door fully open, and the beam fell on a dark shape in the center. It was a wooden crate, lid propped open. Inside, I saw a small jacket, its stripes familiar. I swallowed. The crate had no bottom. It was suspended by chains from a beam. Beneath it, the ground was too wet to see footprints. I whispered, "Kid, talk to me." The radio crackled again, static, then my own voice. "Stay where you are." It echoed. I spun around. No mic, no dispatch, just me in the shed. My phone buzzed again. A single image of the empty crate. No context, no message. I scrolled back. Earlier, texts vanished. My chest tightened. I reached for the crate's edge, and the beam caught something etched on the wood, a single symbol, like an arrow pointing upward. Under the symbol, scratched deep, were words, "You are next." I stumbled back, flashlight clattering. Rain washed over me. Impossible to tell if the message was fresh. I should have called backup. I should have called Jared's mother. Instead, I backed out of the shed, heart slamming against my ribs, and ran to the cruiser. I locked the doors, hands, fumbling. The red cap sat in the passenger seat, drenched, brim pointing at me like an accusation. I started the engine. The overhead light spun. I dialed dispatch, dead. Then I dialed my sergeant, voicemail. My pulse pounded so loud I thought someone might hear it outside the car. I forced the cruiser into reverse and sped down the gravel drive, mud splashing the doors. At the road's end, I slammed on the brakes and turned off the engine. Rain blinded the windshield. I sat in the dark, breathing heavy, and realized I had no idea where Jared was or why he'd been taunting me through my own radio. The rain tapped its impatient rhythm on the roof, as if daring me to step back into the night. Because somewhere out there, in the storm's black heart, someone was watching me. And they weren't finished yet. I can still feel the weight of that first hour, even now. The throttle was cold beneath my palm when I pulled out of the station at 10:47 p.m., rain already slicking the road. My cruiser's engine growled low, two beams carving arcs through the downpour. I flicked on my lights and leaned forward, elbows braced on the wheel, mind running through the missing person report I'd just filed. A middle-aged man, David Strickland, last seen leaving the Blue Moon Diner at 9:15, apparently headed for home on County Road 12. No one heard from him after a single phone call that cut out mid-sentence. The TV in the break room had shown his wife staring blankly into the camera. Mascara streaked down her cheeks as she begged for any news. I promised her I'd find him, even though my gut told me the storm was going to bury more than just the roads. By the time I turned onto County Road 12, the rain was relentless, like someone had turned a faucet on full volume overhead. Wipers kept time at a harsh tempo, squeaking each pass. Headlights cut through a tunnel of black water pooling at the edges, the road's yellow centerline blotting out under a mirror of oil and reflection. I slowed to 25 miles per hour, gloves damp, every nerve ending twitching with that familiar mix of dread and duty. At 10:55, I passed the old mill's skeleton, its boards soaked and sagging, windows dark gashes. The GPS pinged feebly, signal sputtering. I killed the engine and stepped out, boots crunching on gravel. The air tasted heavy, metallic. I walked to the guardrail where a single black umbrella lay, ribs splayed like broken bones. It sat atop a sheet of plywood someone must have thrown down to mark the edge of the flooded ditch. But the wood was dry beneath the umbrella, no rain under it. I knelt, hand hovering above the fabric, breath stalling. A tag on the handle read DS, David Strickland. My pulse went numb. I called dispatch, Unit 7 to dispatch. Found umbrella on CR-12 guardrail, tag matches, missing party. Static, nothing. The radio went silent, as if the storm had drowned the world. I dropped the umbrella back onto the plywood and climbed in. The wipers stuttered on startup, windshield half obscured, half revealed. As I eased forward, the umbrella slipped from my view, carried by a gust, and tumbled into the oncoming lane. I swerved to avoid it, tires hydroplaning for a heartbeat, then grit and traction returned. My heart pounded louder than the rain. I cursed under my breath and kept driving. At 11:03 p.m., the radio squawked again. Someone reporting a vehicle stalled on Highway 47, westbound. No plate given. I flicked on the siren and accelerated, but lights exploded red and blue against the sheets of water, invisible until moments before they blazed in my mirror. By the time I turned onto 47, the road was empty, no sign of headlights. I slowed, scanning shoulders. I thought I saw a faint glow ahead. A tail lamp? But when I closed in, nothing remained. Just rain, reflecting nothing but itself. I reached mile marker 18. There, a pickup sat angled off the pavement, tires half submerged. The engine idled, headlights low beam. I killed my own lights and coasted up on the driver's side. Rain drummed on the roof like 1,000 impatient fingers. I called out, "David? Strickland?" No answer. I edged around to the passenger side and saw a single shoe on the floorboard, dry, pristine. Not a drop of water on the sole. I shone my light, searching the seat and bar floor. Nothing else. No phone, no wallet, no sign of life. I radioed dispatch. Unit 7, stalled pickup. No operator inside. One dry sneaker on passenger floor, requesting backup and tow. Silence. My breath hitched. I placed a hand on the door handle, hesitant. Rain pooled inches deep under my boots. The door swung open with a creak, water rushing in. I stepped inside, swept the seat. Everything was smooth metal and vinyl, no blood, no scuff. Just the mirror dangling from the ceiling, glass cracked like a spider web. I reached up to steady it, and in the reflection I saw a shape behind me. A man, soaked, face obscured by shadow. I spun. Nobody there. Nothing but water sluicing. Down the window. Something tapped on the roof. I froze. Light on the wipers paused mid-swipe, as if time had cracked. Tap, tap, tap. I raised my flashlight to the ceiling. Two small hands pressed against the metal, knuckles white. My insides tightened as slow realization dawned. The roof didn't open. Nothing could be inside. I stumbled out, heart racing, and looked up. No fists, no figure. Only the rain marching down, oblivious. I left the truck and backed toward my cruiser, every footstep a drum roll. When I reached the rear door, I paused. The radio came alive. Unit 7, come in. My voice trembling. Dispatch, did you just... Nothing but static. I slid into the driver's seat and locked the doors. In the reflection, the mirror dangled at a weird angle. I reached for it and felt the crackle of electricity. No wires. I yanked my hand back, stung by something unseen. The mirror swung free, half its glass gone, shards littering the console. At 11:14, I started the engine and peeled away. My eyes flicked to the glove compartment. On the lid, someone had scratched a message. Find him. letters carved deep, rust seeping around them like blood. I slammed on the brakes and slammed open the glove box, empty. The scratch was on the underside of the lid, metal bare beneath layers of paint. They'd carved it from the outside. I closed the door and drove, heart hammering. The next call came at 11:22. Home invasion in progress, County Road 12, near the Cotton Gin. My stomach dropped. That was back where I began. I flipped the wheel, tire tracks slicing through water, racing back along the same stretch. The wipers complained, squealing at the speed. By the time I arrived, lightning split the sky. The gin's old shed loomed like a broken relic. Its red paint peeled, boards warped. Lights from inside glowed faintly through the narrow windows. I killed the cruiser lights and crept up, flashlight low. Doors hung ajar. The metal chain clanged with every drop hitting it. I pressed the beam inside. Empty tables, overturned chairs, a layer of muddy footprints crisscrossing the floor. I crouched, tracing prints toward the back room. I thought I heard labored breathing. My hand hovered over the holster. No siren, no backup. Just me and whatever, or whoever, had lured me here. I turned the corner into a small office, desk covered in dust and rain droplets. On it lay a single photograph. David Strickland, smiling, arm around a woman. The glass was intact, but someone had drawn a line of red ink across his chest, vertical slash. I dropped to my knees and touched it. The ink smudged under my thumb. Behind me, the door slammed shut. I spun, flashlight beam frantic. The room was empty. The stench of wet clothes and fear filled my nostrils. My radio crackled one last time, soft at first, then urgent. Unit 7, medic down. Medic down. Repeat, medic down. I pressed the mic, voice hoarse. Dispatch, where, who? The transmission cut out. Darkness closed in around me, rain hammering the tin roof, unseen eyes watching. I yanked the door open and bolted back the way I came, heart pounding so loud I thought dispatch might hear it. As I ran, a final text arrived on my phone, screen lit against the dark. Rain never lies. I stopped, chest heaving, raindrops mingling with sweat. Lightning fractured the sky. In that flash I saw him, Strickland, leaning against the far wall, head tilting, eyes empty. The clap of thunder cracked, and when my light returned, he was gone. Standing there, drenched and alone, I realized I'd stumbled into a hunt I didn't understand. And the rain wasn't just water. It was a witness. My pulse thundered in my ears as I slipped back into the night, eyes scanning every puddle, every shadow. Because out there, somewhere, he was waiting for me to find him, or for me to lose myself in the storm. And neither outcome would satisfy the person writing these tragedies in water and whispers. The rain was just beginning. The rain came down in sheets when I left the station at 10:13 p.m., beating on the roof of my cruiser like 1,000 tiny fists. I should have stayed under that fluorescent light, filing reports, sipping bad coffee, but duty has a way of dragging you into the storm. I eased out of the lot, tires hissing through puddles, and toggled the mic. Unit 5 to dispatch. I'm en route to the call on Pine Hollow Road, ETA 7 minutes. Static. Probably they were busy with the DUI checkpoint downtown. Pine Hollow Road is one of those forgotten stretches. No streetlights, no houses for half a mile, just trees and waterlogged fields. Rain blurs everything, transforms familiar shapes into shifting shadows. I slowed to 20 miles per hour, headlights cutting a tunnel through the downpour. The wipers squealed in protest, rubber scraping glass in a relentless rhythm that echoed in my skull. I could taste the tension as much as the damp in the air. At 10:22, I passed the old barn that sits crooked by the roadside, its chipped red paint. looked black in the storm. A single lantern flickered in one window. Odd, since the farmer's family keeps the place locked after the lambing season. I killed the engine and stepped out, boots sinking into mud. Raindrops splattered on my jacket, cold as razor tips. I called out, "Hello? You okay in there?" My voice sounded tiny. No response, only the wind lashing dead branches together. Then the lantern winked out, as if someone yanked the cord. I shivered and climbed back in. My radio squawked. "Unit 5, be advised. Motorist stranded on Highway 23 northbound, no plate given." I settled into the driver's seat, soaking in the flickering dash lights. 2 calls, 1 cruiser, 1 rainy night. I keyed the mic. "Copy. I'll check the Pine Hollow first, then cut through to 23 silence. Dispatch must be slammed." Map on the dash GPS blinked. 22 miles to Highway 23, 15 back to the station. I punched the heater. Damp seeped through my gloves and into my bones. The missing person's call was clear enough. A delivery driver flagged down from the road, last seen blinking hazard lights at mile marker 14. But in rain, this thick blinking lights can be any color: red, amber, even white. They bob over the horizon, dissolve into the night. I drove on. At 10:35, the road curved into a shallow valley, water pooling under the low bridge. The sign read, "Dead Oak Creek," and inside the creek the water churned muddy brown, rising toward the deck. I hit the brakes and coasted onto the bridge, engine idling. Above me, oak branches arched together, dripping onto the pavement. I keyed the mic again. "Unit 5 to dispatch. Bridge flooding here. Dead Oak Creek. Recommend road closure." No response. The radio seemed to have drowned in water. I cut the engine and grabbed my flashlight. Headlight beams splintered into rain. I climbed onto the guardrail and looked downstream. The water was swirling faster than usual, entire logs caught in the current. I leaned over and scanned the bank. No sign of a truck, no flashers, only the relentless rain and the roar of the creek. I dropped down and stepped back to the cruiser. As I turned, I saw footprints in the mud. 2 sets, one larger, one smaller, walking upriver. The prints stopped at the guardrail like someone climbed over. No return prints. I froze, rain pelting my face. The small prints were boot-sized, 4 inches across, like a delivery driver's canvas boots. The larger prints 4 inches bigger. 2 people, maybe. I traced them with my finger. The mud was cool. I turned to radio in, but nothing came through. Dead air. Suddenly, a light flicked on behind me. I spun, flashlight beam sweeping. A pickup sat on the bridge, headlights flashing high-low. No plates, no driver. I raised my voice. "Hey, trucker, you need help?" The lights blinked off, then on again. I sprinted forward, boots squelching. Closer now, windshield wipers frozen mid-swipe. I yanked the door, locked. I pounded on the window. Inside, the seat was empty. The engine idled, warm, exhaust steaming out the tailpipe. I tried the passenger door, locked. No key in sight. I slid my flashlight under the driver's door handle, found nothing. I cursed. Then I noticed the side mirror, cracked in a diagonal slash, tint of rust creeping in the fracture. My breath caught. A gust of wind rattled the pickup's bed cover. I flicked my light there. Nothing but coiled rope and an empty ammo box. My gut twisted. I backed toward my cruiser, the downpour blurring all edges. My radio crackled for the first time since I left the station. "Unit 5, come in." Relief so sudden it knocked me off balance. I answered, "Dispatch, I'm on the bridge. 1 possible vehicle but no occupant. Footprints. Copy, Unit 5. Backup is 5 minutes out. Hold tight." I exhaled, wiped rain from my eyes with the back of my hand, and moved in again. The pickup's lights went dark. I jogged forward, nothing. It was gone, vanished into the incensed night. Frustration mixed with adrenaline. I keyed the mic. Dispatch, vehicle left the bridge, last seen heading east. They paused, then, copy, Unit 5. We have a call about a break-in at the Candler residence, 2 miles up the road. That was odd. The Candler place was gated. Dogs kept inside kennels. Alarm system installed last month. I stabbed the siren and peeled off the bridge, tires throwing waves off the pavement. By 10:50, I was at the Candler gate. Lights in the yard flickered. Motion sensor bulbs, but no motion sensor light. Another power glitch. I killed the engine and walked the lane. A single garden gnome lay shattered on its back, head missing. I picked up the broken piece, tiny chipped paint on its face. I pressed my flashlight through the front window. No silhouette, no trespasser. The front door was ajar, the deadbolt hanging loose. I drew my sidearm and eased in. The kitchen was flooded under kidney-deep water from a sink left running. The fridge door was open. Milk spilled across the floor, mixing with rose petals strewn everywhere. I sank down to inspect. The petals looked fresh, crimson against the linoleum. Someone was here, crying maybe, or leaving a message. My flashlight beam flicked to the living room. Picture frames toppled, glass cracking like bones. On the coffee table, a cell phone blinking. Caller ID, unknown. I snatched it, thumb trembling, and the screen showed a single text. Don't leave him behind. No date, no time. I cursed under my breath, pocketed the phone, and radioed dispatch. Candler residence secured. Finding signs of forced entry, water running everywhere, rose petals, and a phone message. Need crime scene unit. Silence. I pressed again. Dispatch, you there? Static. A sudden movement on the stairs had me raising the flashlight. 2 wet footprints led from the hallway into the upstairs darkness. I felt sweat mixed with rain still clinging to my hair, only I wasn't outside. I cleared my throat. Go upstairs. Police. I climbed, Wiper's memory echoing behind my eyes. Each step creaked under waterlogged boards. At the top, a narrow hallway stretched into shadows. Another flash of movement nudged me forward. A door at the end cracked open. Dim light spilled out. I raised my weapon, took a breath, and nudged the door. Inside was a nursery. Crib empty, mobile spinning lazily despite no breeze. A pack and play in the corner, sheets tumbled. On the wall, scrawled in what looked like lipstick, "He's waiting." My heart pounded so hard I thought dispatch might hear it crackle through the speaker. I fumbled for the radio mic. Unit 5, nursery at Candler. Message written, need immediate assistance. My finger froze on the button. Silence. No answer. I glanced at the crib. It rocked slightly, wood creaking. I eased forward. No breeze, no fan on. Crib stopped. In the corner, the pack-and-play tilted, gears unlatching with a click. Inside lay a single sneaker. Tiny, toddler-sized. Clean, white, untouched by water. I felt bile rise in my throat. That shoe belonged to the missing child from last month. 13 months old, never found. The Crawfords never got a body. I snapped a photo with the confiscated cell phone. No flash, just the screen's glow. Then I heard it, the creak of the hallway door behind me. I spun, gun up, footsteps on soaked wood. Slow, deliberate. Someone coming down the hall. My lungs rigid. I whispered, "Police, show yourself." The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched, heavy. Then a voice, quiet and tremulous. "You found him." Not a man, not a woman. Too soft for an adult. I edged toward the hallway, light illuminating dripping wallpaper. At the end, a child, soaked through, hair dark and matted, eyes too old and tired for any kid. He wore a denim jacket with frayed cuffs and that tiny sneaker on one foot. The other foot was bare, toes white. He held out a damp teddy bear, its fur darkened with water and something sticky. I kept my distance, voice low. "You left me." Rain pummeled the window behind him, wind rattling the panes. I swallowed, mouth dry. My radio crackled at last. "Unit 5, back up here. Entry breach, north wing. Proceed with caution." Relief jolted through me but was gone in a breath. I looked back at the boy, his eyes unblinking. Then he faded into the darkness of the hall, footsteps echoing away. I dashed after him, past the nursery, down the stairs that groaned under me. But when I reached the bottom, the hallway was empty. The front door swung in the wind, water lapping at the threshold. I stood there, rain through the broken panes, puddles spreading across the floor. That boy's voice rang in my ears. "You left me." I forced myself outside, back up at my side, and slammed the door shut. Dispatch finally patched through to me as I turned the lock. "Unit 5, status?" My voice shook. Found footprints, found messages, and I saw a child in there. Disappeared before I could reach him. Static. Remain on scene. I climbed into my cruiser, seat wet, coat plastered. I dialed the Crawfords' number on the confiscated phone. Went straight to voicemail. Then I thought of the umbrella on Pine Hollow Road and the pickup on Dead Oak Creek Bridge. And suddenly, every call, every footprint, every echo of that solitary sneaker was connected by the same storm. The wipers resumed their relentless chant. I flicked the mic. "Unit 5 to dispatch. Tonight, I'm not going home. Not yet." Rain lashed the windshield, and I sat there, eyes on the darkness ahead, listening for the next sound. It could be water dripping, a creak in the house, or a child's whisper, "You left me." And I knew the rain would never stop until I answered that voice.